Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember De La Cruz.
Here.
Councilmember Gross.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Petros.
Here.
We do have a quorum, Mayor. If we may please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Soccer players, if you could come forward and lead the pledge, please. Thank you.
The flag's over here.
Good. Just say it loud. You don't have to face them.
Are you all ready?
Pledge allegiance.
Thank you all.
Unfortunately, Mayor, Father Pagwagwa is unable to provide us with an invocation this evening. The next item is brief comments by council.
I just want to wish everyone a happy new year. I hope everyone is rested and ready to work. And we're looking forward to a good 2018. Council members, would you like to add anything?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
So let's get started.
I have a brief comment.
Yes, please. Of course.
I know that we are once again tonight going to be discussing this kiteboarding issue. And I know there are a lot of people that are here to talk about it. And I know that it's something that we spent hours and hours and hours on with workshops and discussions and meetings. And I will tell you that what's going to come up tonight is really very simple. We're going to look at a place to put this that doesn't interfere with condominiums, that does satisfy the needs of the kiteboarders. And I personally, and I think we all feel this way, would really like to limit the discussion tonight about kiteboarding, because we've heard about everything there is to hear, and we've heard it over again and over again. And I would appreciate it if you'd let us do our business, and I think everybody will be very satisfied with the outcome. Or maybe not, but let's give it a try.
Thank you, Council Member.
Next item, under special presentations, U16 Boys Key Biscayne Soccer Club.
Coaches, Mr. Radice, if you could please come up.
Shall I just say a few words?
Of course. At the podium, please.
Marcelo Radice, 42 Samana Drive. I'm the president of Key Biscayne Soccer Club. First of all, I'd like to thank you all Happy New Year. And I'd like to thank Mayor Lindsay, the board, the council, village manager, Todd Hofferberth. I'd like to thank them all for this opportunity to come up today and at least acknowledge the success of one of our teams. Last year, we made history with this club by having our first team ever make it to a Florida State Cup final. Our U15 players at the time, who are now moved on another year and have started another season with us, had a great season, and unfortunately it was a hard-fought game, and they came out on the short end. But we hope that they can have another shot at it this year, and then this time they can bring home the final champion trophy. And right behind them, we've got a lot of other clubs, other teams that have had a very successful State Cup performance as well. So we're very pleased, and I'd like to just acknowledge them and invite them up.
Absolutely, please.
So let's bring up, come on up, guys. And then we can allow the parents to have a quick photo with you all. That would be nice, very nice.
Well, congratulations.
Without the support of the parents, without these players, without the support of the community and the coaches, this wouldn't happen. So this is a great milestone for the club, and we hope that we can build on this and make the whole community proud this year. Thank you.
Ms. McCormick.
I just want to congratulate again the soccer players and to say that you guys you're an example to the younger children on this island, both on the field and off. And I'm really glad that you got to come here tonight and be recognized for your accomplishments. And I hope that you continue to set a good example for all the children on the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Next item is public comments.
Sure. Let's start with Belvis Martinez.
Belvis Martinez is my wife. Because of what Councilmember Gross said, she was just going to talk about kite surfing, then she's going to not talk. So I'm signed up next, so I'll just speak on both of our behalves. I'm only Fernando Romero, 121 Crandon Boulevard, Unit 457. The only reason I'm here is to give you guys an update of what happened this weekend. It was windy. We were on the beach. Crandon allowed us to move the cones a little bit to the north, so we were in between Key Biscayne and Crandon, but we allowed for a lot of room between Commodore and the cones, so there was absolutely no interference. The policing of the rules and everything was fantastic. We had eight marshals, 8 volunteer marshals. No interference, no issues, no problems. It was a great day, and again, the lieutenant from the park allowed us to push the boundary. He said, enjoy yourselves. The key here is that spot, the boundaries are the known vessel and the 2 depth markers, and people don't use the beach there because it's too deep. Okay? So what we took advantage of was just to cross and body drag that way, and it was about a maximum of 20 riders, and that's it. So I wish you all happy New Year, and I'll see you soon. Now I'm gonna go celebrate my 50th birthday, which is today, with my family.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ignacio Segurola.
Good evening, Council. Ignacio Segurola, 81 Ocean Drive. As Councilmember Gross suggested, I will not beat a dead horse and try to sound like a broken record, but none of us, I don't know your thoughts and everything that's happened since the last meetings, but we look forward to a very lively debate in order to come to a very amicable solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean Fedork.
I don't want to take up much time either, except we have a condo that overlooks the kiteboarding area that was just referenced. And our understanding is that the cones that the kiteboarders set up to create a channel was not in agreement with the park. And in fact, on Monday morning, the park came and took them all away. So it was on park property. And our understanding from park management is that they did not agree to that. And in fact, on Monday morning, they took the cones that the kiteboarders had brought and took them away. So there might be a misunderstanding somewhere, but that's our understanding.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike O'Brien.
Mike O'Brien, 150 Ocean Lane Drive. I'm the general manager of the Key Biscayne Beach Club. I'm in my 30th year there. I've seen a lot of stuff happen on the beach. This Sunday at 11:30 a.m., Gino Marin, who we all know very well, swam out to the post, was swimming back in. A kiteboarder launched from in front of the sands, almost ran across his face, 20 feet out from the beach. His daughter was on the beach. She freaked out. She was screaming. I went down to the beach. They wanted to call the police. I told them the best thing they could do is go make a report because the kiteboarder was gone. Kiteboarding is dangerous. It doesn't belong with a passive beach. I've seen it over the years. Now, when it all started out 20 years ago with people like York Flick, Eric Lang, the Vail brothers, and Rob Morrison, kiteboarding, never had a problem. But this group is rude, arrogant, and reckless. 60 deaths in the last 5 years kiteboarding. Crandon Park handles it perfectly. I talked to Danny Barcia, the manager of the park, and what they do and the organization they have, they take care of it. They've never had a beachgoer injured. We don't have that luxury because of access to the beach. And what it's going to create, if we open it up to let people in there, they're just going to go crazy. They do now. People come out of the sands, people come down to Galen Access and just go right off. I've never seen anybody paddle out to the, or drag, or whatever they call it, to a post and then start kite surfing. Never seen it. That's my comment for tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jared Semantowski. Is that close?
It's Zementowski.
Zementowski.
It's very Polish, and that's actually shorter than it was at Ellis Island. Hi, how are you? Jared Zementowski, 7600 Southwest 125th Street. I'm the attorney for the Commodore Club East. I would like to ask one, if it would be possible for my client to speak for me, if the council would allow that. Attorney.
Sure.
Thank you, council. My name is Greg Rosen. I'm the 177 Ocean Lane Drive, that's Commodore East. I'm the president of our condominium association. I will keep this brief. I am not here tonight speaking for myself, but really for the 98 or 99% of the 187 unit owners in Commodore East. And also I'm authorized to speak for the 98 or 99% of 187 or 188 unit owners in Commodore South and Commodore West. That's 98 or 99% of about 560 or 70 units. And we are adamantly opposed to kiteboarding on the Commodore Club East beaches. You all know that, but I just want to take a minute and show you a couple of things if the video is working. Choose the initial settings. Okay, so I don't know if it'll come up. Yeah, let's just, so this is, sure. Just take a look at the video on the screen. This is what happens in front of our beach regularly. Those are our beach chairs, and that's a kite out of control. And going into the beach chairs, if someone had been sitting there, it would have been a very tragic injury. This happens regularly. We just happen to have caught this one on video. That is the danger that arises from kiteboarding in it was just described as a passive beach. Just a few more slides. That's the Commodore Complex. This is an example. This is not a heavy day of kiteboarding in front of our complex, but you can see that you can barely make your way from our beach to the south toward Crandon Park. And we have days when there are 2 or 3 times the number of kites being inflated and rigged or broken down in that area in front of our chairs. And it literally is not possible to pass from north to south on the beach. This is just an example of a kiteboarder, not only within the vessel exclusion zone, but near shore, and you can see the proximity to the waders in the shallow water just off the beach. Another example of kiteboarding within the vessel exclusion zone. This is, again, a regular occurrence, and sometimes we'll have a half a dozen or more kiteboarders in this area, and you can see the waders in the shallow water in danger, as was just described by the manager of the beach club. Some more kiteboarders, again, within the vessel exclusion zone in close proximity to many, many waders who are out on the sandbar in front of our complex. And here's another kiteboarder in the vessel exclusion zone, just opposite. That's probably Key Colony pushing towards the Silver Sands. And then every kiteboarding organization will tell you that you need 300 feet as a safety zone. So here are the measurements. That's 600 feet from the boundary at Crandon to the end of the Commodore Club. 300 feet would stretch into the middle of that. There just isn't room for the the safety zone that is recognized by the kiteboarding associations and to have kiteboarding safely on our beach. So thanks for listening, and please take our concerns to heart.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Antonio Camejo.
Well, excuse me, we still want Mr. Zemenkowski to be able to speak.
Oh, I thought, okay, I thought he had yielded to you.
He's here to address a completely different issue, but at your convenience, according to your schedule. Let's Mr. Camejo.
Yes, I will, thank you.
Antonio Camejo, 151 Crandon Boulevard. The bottom line here is that you can't deny the rights of some people to give rights to other people. And we've got to figure out a way to provide a situation where we're not denying safety to recreational beachgoers on what should be a recreational beach, a passive recreational beach. And really, we have two major parks, Crandon Park, which already has a facility for kiteboarders, and we have Bill Baggs Park, which is way underutilized, hundreds of meters of beach that are practically nobody on them. And so the council really should concentrate its efforts on finding a solution with the state of Florida and engage with them and devote assets to that negotiation so that we get that done. In the meantime, if we can find a temporary, and it should only be a temporary space that works for everybody, it should be just that, a temporary space while a good solution and a lasting solution is found. And Bill Baggs Park, I think, is the obvious choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else signed up to speak? Okay, and council, you will follow.
Just a second. My name is Belvis Martinez. I was not speaking at the beginning because I thought we were not going to speak about kite surfing. So I said, okay. But as far as some people is speaking, I would like to give also my point of view. Belvis Martinez, 121 Crandon Boulevard. I live in Key Colony, apartment 457. First of all, I'm proud of being one of the families in Key Biscayne, and I thank you to all of you for the efforts in organizing all this kite surfing activity. My husband is a kite surfer. My two children, they are teenagers, 13 years old, 15 years old. They are kite surfers. And I was learning kite surf 2 years ago. Then I got breast cancer. I had to stop because of the chemotherapy and the surgery and all of that. And now I was excited to start again. And I found all these problems in the neighborhood. And well, I hope they can be fixed soon because it's a family plan, in my opinion. And kite surf is about nature and healthy lifestyle. And of course, if you don't follow rules, maybe you can have things, but pictures I've seen, they are bothering me because this is something I haven't seen. And I've been living in Key Biscayne only for 4 years. Maybe in the past it was like that, but I think in the present it's not like this anymore. And of course, I prefer my children to practice kite surf instead of being at home with the PlayStation or taking drugs or many other problems that we have with teenagers. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, would you like to
Yes, I would. Thank you.
say a few words?
As Councilmember Gross had said, I will try to keep this very short. I know you're all in receipt of the letter that I had sent out last week. The comments that I was going to make were going to be directed at the proposed ordinance that was going to be read today. I'm getting the impression that there may be some revisions to that ordinance. So as such, I would just like to say, per my letter, there are a number of property rights involved here, and I would just hope that any revised ordinance takes into account those property rights, because I do know my client will vigorously defend them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will be closing public comments. Do we have any more public comments?
Next item.
There's a hand up.
Oh, there is? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I haven't signed up, so am I allowed to?
Please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and then we'll give you the courtesy of signing up afterwards.
Enrique Cisneros, 350 Ocean Drive. I've been living in Key Biscayne for 4 years, and sorry, I'm coming in a little late into this, and being respectful of all the comments and evidence that's been presented. As an avid kiteboarder my entire life, and something that, I'm very happy that's something that I can do here, and it's a big draw for me to be living in Key Biscayne because of it. I just want to understand, how can we be more proactive in providing solutions? Obviously, it's very easy to stand here and give negative comments about kiteboarding, and as others said, let's provide some rules, some structure, and regulate it. I think we all agree with that, but how can we be more proactive in actually providing those solutions as quickly as possible before this escalates any further? So I'm not sure what's the proper forum for that, where we can have the discussion of a proposed.
We've been having ongoing discussions, and this is one of the right forums, so we're glad you're here today. And you've got a colleague, Fernando, who has been organizing a Key Biscayne kite surfing organization. But this group has been working hard, and we will make sure that you get word, and please speak to Fernando so that you become part of the dialogue. We welcome you.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Cecile Sanchez regarding landscaping.
You're not a
Cecile
kiteboarder?
Sanchez, 260 Cypress Drive. I already told you, and I wrote a little island.
She already spoke about it.
And I'm sorry, I like to snorkel, and I love those flats. And yes, I feel threatened. I don't want to have to, I want to enjoy myself there because it is paradise, and not be thinking that somebody's gonna come and go over me. That's it. But thank you. We incorporated 25 years ago, I believe. I was able, since I am a rat pack, I found a Islander article that says Beautification Foundation claims public landscaping unsightly. Just want to read a couple of paragraphs. Key Biscayne Beautification Foundation President Cecile Sanchez wasted little time in informing the new village council about the state of public landscaping on the island on the island Paradise. At the council's first meeting in November, Sanchez described some of the landscaping public property as unsightly and an eyesore. She asked the council to allow the Beautification Foundation, now we have a landscaping committee, to take a more active role in making swales, medians, traffic circles more aesthetically appealing. There's no reason why the swales and medians should look the way they do. Still, Sanchez said during an interview Monday, "We would like to serve as an advisory capacity if the village would allow us, but we met with some resistance." Village manager Sam Kissinger implied that the problem was more of a lack of communication than resistance. Please. We had severe pruning done, and I will give you pictures, in the median, all the median and Crandon Boulevard. I understand that there are laws for visibility, but we all know that. So why can't our village landscaping maintenance make sure that when the plants grow to a certain size, they need to be cut, just like we go to the beauty parlor or the barbershop? Why do we do this extreme
makeover
pruning? Because it's like a crew cut. Please take a look at it. Now we're going to have a mile long, the length of our island, our most important street, looking the way it does. Why are we doing this? We can do it right. Can we make sure? We need to have accountability. We need to be supervising. Please allow. We just hired $65,000 consultant that is supposed to be coming, I think, Thursday. He wasn't consulted. I called the University of Florida Extension office. I sent pictures. They said this is extreme pruning. I I talked to the Campo's director. Campon is the David Fairchild's estate. You do not prune until March. You don't do that. You stress the plants. Please, it's 20 years. Can we try and work together and get it right? That's all we're asking. There's 3 of us that are willing to give time, do the best we can to work all together to make our island beautiful. I can send you more hotspots, but I know you don't like me to drive you nuts. But I will continue coming with pictures until you understand that we need help. Thank you.
You know what? Thank you very much for everything you've done for the last 20 years. We do appreciate it very much. If you could please send me a list of all your hotspots and all the issues. Educate us.
It's a long list.
Well, then we should know it's a long list. We don't know it's a long list.
We pass it along, the village staff knows.
I don't know it's a long list. Can I please have the list? Thank you.
It looks different, doesn't it? It is different.
Next, okay, so now we're closing public comments, I believe. Anybody else?
Ceci, can I please have a copy?
They're all different, actually.
Oh, they're different?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the long list.
No, hers.
That's fine. No problem. Just for the record, thank you. Next item is approval, deferrals, additions.
Absolutely. Let me.
Mayor, we have one more speaker that would like to.
Absolutely.
If you can state your
Please
name.
come to the podium, say your name.
Thank you very much. Sorry I was late. I just came straight from the office. 177 Ocean Lane Drive, apartment 915, Miguel Cebolla. I've read in the news and actually been a couple of times here in the council hearing about what's going on with kite surfing. I'm a father of 2 kids and I'm very concerned about security. But the reality is that when I see the sport, and actually the perfect example was this Sunday, it was very ugly weather. We were home, inside, looking at the beach. There were kite surfers, and the reality is that normally when they are there, nobody else sees. I mean, you need very strong wind. You need significant wind to be able to do it. And I would invite you guys to go to the beach when the kite surfers are there. And normally there are no Key Biscayne residents other than the ones that are doing the sport. I'm totally in favor of controlling the situation and making sure that it's done properly and they have marked spots that they can access the water, but not banning the sport. I missed the part, so I didn't. At one point, I read that there was meant to put in place a quota for the kite surfing license. I don't know if that's still the case. But one of the things that I would like to put into consideration, if that's still valid and you're thinking about going that route, I understand that people that are coming from Miami-Dade or other dates should be restricted, but I don't think that the residents of Key Biscayne should be restricted on a quota. I don't do kite surfing. It's something that I've been thinking about doing for the past 2 years, but for me, it would be sad. I mean, I understand getting a level of knowledge to not pose a safety hazard to anyone. But I would really dislike that in 2 years' time, I decide to do kite surf, and I realize that I have to go through a list or a waiting list just to get a quota, and that somebody from Miami or from Broward, because they came here 2 years earlier, they have that license and we don't. So I would like to put that consideration for residents not to be subject to any restriction or quota. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. And now we're closing public.
Next item is approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals.
Let's start from the right. Frank, and I think Luis.
Yeah, for sake of good order, I wanted to make a suggestion. It pertains to item 4. I'm sure this is the fast track thing, which has me a bit confused. I'm sure there's a constructive purpose behind this, but as this is presented, I would like not to deal with this as an action item and have a discussion about it. it's just not presented in a way that's comprehensible, and I think it would be unfair to whatever is intended or desired to deal with this as an action item, because I think it would be impossible for me to support it as it's presented.
What is it?
Tab
Tab
for
for item
number
4.
10.
Tab 4.
10A.
Tab for 10A.
Yeah. So just a suggestion, I want to have the discussion. Also, I see that Luis has a report on Optimus, which is potentially either similar or the same thing, and that will occur later in the agenda than this action item. So I'd like not to have an action on this tonight and talk about it if that's the desire.
Why don't we discuss it? If we want to table it, we table it. If we think, I mean, we can take all sorts of action after the discussion. I actually, and is Melissa here because she's going to be talking about the other program?
Right.
So I think we need to discuss it to see if it dovetails or if it doesn't, and whatever action we take, whether it's a deferral or more information, that's fine.
Okay, so I went online and I checked Fast Track and the people behind it, and I think it's a very, very worthy cause to discuss. The way it's presented here is incomprehensible. So we need to take it out. We need to do it again next time and do it right and bring the people that support it. It just doesn't make sense. The way.
Did you get the
Yes.
exhibits?
Yes.
Yeah, I went through them.
Yeah, but,
So let's have a discussion if it needs to be tabled and brought back, but let's have a discussion.
well, I wouldn't.
I want to have a discussion, but I move to,
But it can be part of- it can be part of the
defer the
resolution.
action item. I want to have a discussion. I move to defer the action item. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So we'll have a discussion.
That item will be item 11A10.
You know what?
We can keep it where it is, as far as I'm concerned.
That's perfect. Why don't we do that?
And can I make it worse?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good.
Please.
I had spoken earlier with Melissa.
Yes.
The discussionary item regarding the whole view is currently 11A9, and I would ask permission to move the 9.
Let's put them together.
Those-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're going to put that over to 10A? How are we
10A
doing?
and B,
Okay.
kind of.
Good.
11A1 and 2.
Good. That's all I got.
I'd like to add an item at the end of the discussion on a potential traffic circle at Harbor and Crandon Boulevard.
Okay.
Is that 10? No, 9.
That would be
1110, 11A10,
Well, we moved 9.
11A9.
well, I think it stays the same. So it would be 10.
Would you do me a favor and put it, switch it with number 7, just in case we don't get to it for whatever reason?
Okay.
Thank you.
So 10, a 7. Can you repeat the title? I'm sorry, Councilmember De La Cruz.
Yes. Discussion on a potential traffic circle for Crandon and.
Got it.
We have 2 additional discussion items. Update on our lobbyist group and the changes of new staffing added. I think we all got an email this afternoon. Our lobbying group?
No.
No.
The document you have in front of you, Mayor, I'm sorry, it was sent to us at 6:45 this evening, and all I had time to do was make hard copies for the dais.
Where is it?
Where is it? I saw the email, but I have not seen.
I got no email.
No, we didn't send an email. I received it at 6:45.
I received one as well.
Directed,
Okay, so this is coming, so just an FYI, because legislative session opened today. And then the other item I'd like to speak about is NOAA is possibly moving from Virginia Key. City of Tampa is wooing them and building facilities, and that could have a real impact for our institutions in Miami-Dade County and Key Biscayne, so I just wanted to bring this to your attention to discuss.
Can we also, this should be an action item for next time. Let's discuss it and let's decide tonight what we want to do about it.
Yes.
So you got that, Jen?
Yes. Any other changes?
I think Brett had one,
Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry.
I'd like to swap 11A3 with 11A6, just so I can do number 6 before number 3. And I'd like to add one item at the end of the discussion item to revisit the hurricane prepared plan for 2018.
He wants to switch 3 and 6, and you said revisit hurricane plan?
Yep.
Or see the hurricane plan, the updates.
See where we are with it.
Reading a new memo. What was that?
Revisit hurricane plan. Switch, so switching 6 to 3, and you're adding an additional item? No,
The hurricane plan.
hurricane plan.
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is an ordinance on first reading. It's an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 4, Boats, Vessels, and Watercraft, regulating kiteboard use, amending Article 2 of Chapter 4 by the creation of Section 4-33, kiteboarding, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Brett.
So, you know, through the last few months of working with the kiteboarders, the concerned citizens, I think it's clear that we have 3 issues. We have public safety issue, a nuisance issue, and we have recreation activity. And I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to get rid of a recreational activity, but we want to regulate it so it is safe and we don't have near misses or a problem in the future. I think that in order to do this, I think first we need to prohibit it on the beaches, except in a designated area that we can define clearly, set up launch zone and a channel where kiters can go out and they can use it and it can be controlled and it can be regulated in that area. That for me is a top priority. I think that we need to possibly look back at our zoning definition as well and look at ways that we can clarify what can be in that vessel exclusion zone or what is a vessel. And I think that's something that we can work with our legal team and see if we can figure that out as soon as possible. But we may want to do that under a separate ordinance or a separate time. And that's something I want to discuss with you guys as well. And then the fifth thing is to redraft the kiteboarding section regulation. I think what we had was a good start. I know I sent out some information to all of you of what I think that we should maybe update and relook at. I see 3 different categories. One is clarifying that kites are exempt in a certain area and where that location is. The second is how kites are going to be regulated in those areas, the operations of it, the setup, the launch, the channel, what they can do, what they're not supposed to be doing. And the last is the administration requirements, the permits, the fees, the streamers, the certification, the insurance that we want to see. So what I would propose is tonight is to decide where that location can be. We took a walk along the beach from the north end all the way to the south, and it seemed to me that there was only 2 viable locations. One was in front of the Commodore Club, and because of the beach being so large, and the other one was near the Sonesta, the old Sonesta channel, because the beach was much quieter there. I think that the decision is pretty much made for us in a way, because the 2 groups that were concerned, I've asked both of them, are you okay with having this near the Commodore? The kiteboarders say, of course, yes. The Commodore says, and the people who are concerned say, no, but that's not where we want it. I asked the next location near the Sonesta channel, are you happy with this? Can we have it here? Kiteboarder says, yes, we'll be happy with it. The concerned citizen says, yes, we'll be happy with it. So for me, it's an easy solution. They chose it for me. And I think that's where we should focus our attention on in selecting a place.
Katie.
Okay, just to bring us back to where we started and to try to keep it concise, I brought this forth specifically trying to get some framework for kiteboarders. And I went back and looked at a meeting that occurred in 2013. The conversation was almost identical. And the big challenge is where to put it. And we, as a board, I think it's important that we look and try to understand what is the safest area on the length of our beaches. And when we walked it, one of the things that we were focusing on that I thought people could agree about easier was where it is the least safe. And every example that's happened that people have come up and talked about are pretty much people violating what would be our regulations if we were able to put something in place. So to go back, some of the things that I would like to add to this ordinance that has not changed since our last meeting. I personally think we should have hours of operation. I think that we need to add proof of insurance and a signed agreement of a compliance for people in addition to the streamer and the level of certification and all the things we already discussed. And then the other thing is to determine exactly what framework, if we're going to determine locations, we may want to limit it to a small area for a certain period of time to ease the enforcement aspect of this. But maybe that area could, if we are able to get a safe environment and the kiteboarders using our beaches are doing it in a safe way, which every kiteboarder that's come up here has said they're willing to do. Now, whether that happens or not, we don't know. But we need to put something simple in place that the village can enforce and that we support. And then if it doesn't happen, then we take the next action. But that's how I think it should work from this point forward.
Fair enough. Luis and then Gary.
I'm not talking about this. Yes, I know. All right, you go.
Luis and then Gary.
Okay, so here's my view on it. First of all, I think that regardless of what happens with the kiteboarding, it would be a great idea for us to know where the village of Key Biscayne ends and Miami-Dade County starts.
Do we have that slide?
It's that road, I think.
No, but you're absolutely, yes, go on.
Okay, so
Are we doing
I've tried to get it from Chad, I've tried to get it from different people, I haven't been able to get it, maybe it already exists, I'm sure it exists somewhere, but if not, we need a surveyor to tell us, so that we know what it is that we can determine. Second, I believe that the perfect place for the kiteboarding is just north of the towers, just south of the towers, okay? I think that is the absolute best place. I think, I don't know that we have gone as far as we need to go, and Allison may be able to fill us in on this, with the state park people, but I really do believe that we need to explore this particular area because as much as I walk that beach, and I do it often, I keep telling you guys, I definitely walk it all the time. And that is the area that has the least population on it at any time. And it doesn't have any buildings around it, so there's no wind issue that York was informing me about. I happen to believe that that's the best place. Now, it may be that the state park won't cooperate with us. You know, I think we should be in a position to. I think we should be in position to offer financial help if it's an enforcement type situation that they're concerned about. But I certainly believe that we need to eliminate that before we go and put it in an area where there's more people. So please think about that when.
Gary, Frank, and then Allison.
I totally agree with you in the long term, or hopefully the not so long term. But in the meantime, we don't know how long it's going to take to work that out, and we don't know if we can work it out. If we can, it could be a great solution. But in the meantime, we've got to do something about this now. And I think the proposals that have been brought up, first by Katie and then expanded upon by Brett, pretty much address everything we need to do. We're removing this kiteboarding activity from the entire beach except for a designated spot that both sides of this argument agree to. I don't think there's any possible way to do any more than this right now. If, after we do this, we find a better spot, whether it's the Cape Florida location or whatever, we can always address it and change the location because this isn't permanent. We're not building anything there. It doesn't cost anything to put it in. It doesn't cost anything to take it out. But we've got to stop messing around with this and get kiteboarding off the beach where most of the people are and put it in a spot on the beach where very few people are. If we can't do that, we've got to ban it from the beach. And I don't want to do that either. So we've got a good set of regulations. We've got an agreement on both sides as to where it could go. We all know it's going to be a safe location. Why don't we just get this done, knowing that we have the right and the ability to change it at any moment that something better comes along. But I think we can't defer this any longer. I'd like to go ahead and get this done in the location that we're talking about with the regulations that have already been discussed.
Sounds good. Frank? And then
I
Allison.
want to speak to the ordinance itself and not cover past ground again, but Allison, would you like to jump me and report?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of details at this point, but I am actively working with the park, trying to see if anything can be done. And beyond that, I can't speak too much about it in detail, but I will say I don't feel like I'm wasting my time. I mean, I agree with Gary. We need to do something in the short term because, things do take some time and some doing, but I'm working with them and I'm hopeful.
Okay, thank you. I'll make just two comments on location and then get to the ordinance. Our walk on the beach last Friday suggested to me that it's relatively underpopulated at the south end near the towers, but it's also very narrow. There's a benefit in having road access and all that parking, but it's narrow. And of course, we'd need partnership in some way or another with the state. With respect to the south area, with all due respect to everyone who's expressed an opinion about this, I have found in my life that sometimes leadership and coming to the best possible decision requires thinking very carefully about pros and cons and trying to come up with a set of arrangements that are acceptable to everyone.
You're talking about the north end.
The north end.
The north end, I'm sorry. Near Commodore, not adjacent to Commodore, but obviously near Commodore. I can see from the drawing that Mike put up that the road that we were standing adjacent to is actually north of the village boundary. I can't tell on that map where the swim marker is or those two signs are that we focused on when we were speaking about this with Christophe and others. But clearly, if there was to be any solution there, in addition to the solution that we're talking about that Gary has broached tonight, it would require some kind of compact with the county, and it would also require agreement with Commodore and with all constituents. And that's not going to happen tonight. So with that said, and with the proposition that there may be some further work before us, either because it's a better outcome and therefore desirable to try, or because maybe this won't work as optimally as we like and we'll need additional arrangements, or to alleviate the concentration by having only one single location, I propose to keep trying. But in the meantime, I'd like to move forward with this tonight, and I have a couple of suggestions to pick up on where we left off on the ordinance itself. Starting with this, I don't think it wise to suggest in this ordinance that a vessel and a kiteboard are different things. There is maybe two possible interpretations under our own code about what a vessel is vis-a-vis a kiteboard. And the only way a kiteboard, as I read our code, is not a vessel is if you're carrying it, or if the kite is not deployed and it's not under power and is not being operated. If it's not being operated and the kite is not deployed, I don't think it's a vessel. If the kite is deployed and it's being operated, including by body dragging, I think it's demonstrably a vessel. And it's not a big point because we're now going to regulate this, but we've had 25 years of history with this, and I don't think it wise to create confusion about what this is or isn't looking backward.
Mr. Friedman, would you like to add anything?
But if you let me get to the rest of what I'm going to suggest, it won't matter.
But it might. So I just want to make sure it doesn't matter to him.
At the end of the day, you know, Frank and I we have agreed to disagree, as well as other people, on this issue. You know, we don't believe it to be a vessel, and that's it. But I think that what Frank said was that whatever is done through this ordinance is going to moot out, I think, that issue. So.
And that's fine, but I want that for the record. Yes, Katie.
Chad, didn't you tell me if we were to consider it a vessel, that might create other difficulties with state law? And can you explain that to us?
The regulation of vessels are preempted to the state. So when we do vessel exclusion zones, we go through a process of getting the ordinance blessed by the state. And, you know, defining it as a vessel, I mean, I think we'd have to speak to the state about it, but we may have to get their blessing of the ordinance.
Okay, and I understand that. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
That is certainly not wrong, but to contrive a definition is it's just not intellectually honest, in my opinion. But I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And as we work through this, I hope we'll get to a common understanding of why. Because we're going to regulate this going forward, and it's ideally not going to matter.
I don't know this to be true, but there is a definition of kiteboarding in Florida law. And in that definition, the legislature could have chosen to define it as a vessel, but instead defines kiteboarding and kite surfing as a board tethered to a kite as opposed to a kite tethered to a vessel.
Which to me is a subspecies of vessel under our code, not under state law. But we're looking at our code.
So I think that, again, regardless, this may be moot through this process. And, you know, to the extent we need to speak with the state, we will.
So let me work through the ordinance real quick. The definition of operate, I think, is not adequate for our purpose because the definition of operate only deals with vessels in the water. We're also talking about launching and recovery from the beach and on the beach. And as we've observed when we were out on the beach, the biggest problem is actually the deployment from the beach to get into the water. So I think the definition of operate, when we come back for second reading, could reflect that because we are actually regulating that. It's the most germane thing we're doing tonight, regulating that. So that's number one. Number two, the authorization that we're about to grant if we adopt this ordinance is subject to restrictions imposed by the village council, and I think we should say so. The restrictions, I think, have been enumerated, and some of them are in this ordinance and some of them are in Brett's email. But we had thoughts about a few others, which were to limit the number of people that would be able to kiteboard at any given time to a number. The number discussed at the beach walk last week was 10.
Number of kites on the beach.
Operators at any given time. The number of registrants that was discussed overall was at 100. I'm not married to the numbers, but the idea of an at any given time restriction was important so that the dimension, which is narrow, wouldn't be overburdened.
The only problem that I have, Frank, is that we would need somebody out there to control that. It's very hard to enforce the number of kites.
We're going to get to that. I know.
Okay.
We're going to get to that. And you know, it may be either an intrinsic problem in policing this, or it may be deference to the honor system, but I recognize that. But still, the overburden potential in a narrow bandwidth where you're talking about having to lay the lines out when you are actually ready to deploy and launch west to east, in other words, along, perpendicular to the shoreline, means you can't have too many people out there. It just won't work. So whether it's policed or not, that's got to be part of the regulation. The other thing that was discussed that I didn't appreciate before we walked on the beach was the shearing wind, wind direction optimalization of conditions. I think we all learned, and I don't mean to speak for anyone else, but I certainly learned, that there are wind conditions that are simply unsuitable for this activity. And sometimes that's made worse seasonally, but it could arise any time. So the northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast direction, as opposed to directly onshore, directly offshore, is something that I think we might want to include, along with the discretion to have blackout periods when it's very busy on a holiday, for example.
Are you saying that when you're getting wind directly on shore, they would have to tack to go out? So
Yes.
that creates a more dangerous situation?
Yes. And we sort of tested this. It's possible to do so if the dimension is wide enough. But if the dimension, and the dimension here at the Sonesta realm, the old Sonesta realm, the sandbar, is maybe less than 120 feet. I think it's probably less than 120 feet, maybe close. But the gentleman who was demonstrating how one tacks was basically using twice the dimension of the cone as sort of a minimal safe parameter. And I don't think we have that parameter. So if you're facing an onshore wind or an offshore wind, I think our conclusion last Friday was that it's just not the right day to kite surf.
But what happens when the wind changes while they're out there?
You have to be very good, which is why you need a level 3 certification. You have to be very good at this. So, but I think the guys who have that certification basically suggested to us, we would not do this if it was directly onshore, directly offshore. It's not the right time. So if we're wrong on this, and I know there's guys in the back that purport to know more about this than I do, I've just listened and learned, you'll tell us at second reading, but this is what I think we discussed, and I got a thumbs up on that, so.
And because we have, I'm sorry, are you done, Frank?
I got a few more.
Okay.
You can't give your streamer to somebody else, particularly that somebody else doesn't have a level 3 certification. Your point about agreeing and having in the certification process an acknowledgement and insurance should include a statement to that effect. And I've got a few text edits, including the idea that we had talked about of having the sunset so that we can see in a year whether this really worked adequately or not. And in the meantime, I propose to keep trying to see whether Bill Baggs might be a suitable location and whether the north is a suitable location, if everybody can agree. That's what I got.
Fair enough. I know we have a back row full of individuals who may want to make public comments on this ordinance. Because it is an ordinance, I'd like to open it for public comments. It can be first and second, actually.
Hello again. My dinner has been delayed a little bit.
You're 51 now. Huh?
I think pretty much was.
Identify yourself again.
Sorry?
Identify yourself again.
Oh, Fernando Romero, 121 Crandon Boulevard, 457, unit 457.
Thank you.
I think what Vice Mayor Kaplan said is pretty much dead on, except for some technicalities. But yeah, the condition of onshore wind, direct onshore wind, causes a difficulty exiting the body dragging area. Okay, just like Brett said. Council Member Moss said. Offshore is off. It's like a switch. If the wind is offshore, we turn the switch off. There should not be kiting allowed with offshore winds, but the safety issue is with the rider, because the rider can be dragged with the wind, and it could drown. Okay, so it's not the issue with the people on the beach, but the safety of the rider. So we turn it off. It's like offshore, we turn the switch off. Okay, it's a good mnemotechnic resource here. okay? And for pretty much everything that Vice Mayor Kaplan said, you're right. I mean, if you need any explanation here or anything, I mean, yeah.
How do you envision turning the switch on and off?
Well, no one with a level 3 license, no one with an ICAO level 3 license would dare to go out in the water with an offshore wind. So, I mean, we learned that. You know, we learned that the risk to the rider is with an offshore wind because he's going to push you out. There's no rescue. There's no way. If something fails in the equipment, you know, you can actually do a self-rescue in which you can actually use the kite as a, you know, as a sailboat and come back to the beach. You just get pretty much on top of the kite and sail back to the beach.
I guess my question is, are you planning on having marshals or somebody on the beach to
control it?
Controlling who, you know, when you cut off the activity?
They wouldn't be out there.
If we were to see someone breaking the rules are the rules. We set up the rules. If we see someone, you know, we take a picture, you know, we go after the person, and that person is banned from practicing the sport on the beach. The people in Miami Beach who are here, they would do the same thing. They would probably ban that person, and that person, you know, they would call the police, say, you know, you can't do this. The rules are the rules.
I'm just trying to figure out how you enforce it. How do you enforce the rules that?
We're going to enforce it, I think.
Huh?
Just like,
We are going to enforce it, the village.
So our police officers are going to determine which way the wind is blowing and.
The wind thing might be a little difficult.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
yeah.
tell you. I mean, you know, if we're going to have these rules, they need to be enforced somehow. So I'm just wondering if we're going to have a marshal out there from your group that's going to be taking care of making sure that it's safe. You know.
we have.
I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that the westerly wind issue is something that even needs to be enforced. It's not like it has to be like the beach is closed at this point. It's just something that is simply not done, that no one at this level goes out. And if they do, it's the same rules that apply, right? They have to be certified. They have to have the kite and see you in Bimini. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case you wanted some help. York Flick, 338 West Heather Drive. With respect to the rule of wind direction, truth of the matter is really nobody kites anywhere in an offshore wind. You wouldn't need a rule like that. Furthermore, it's a little more complicated with respect to an onshore wind. I mean, if you have a light onshore wind and it's directly onshore, you might have a problem tacking, but a stronger wind is easier to tack in. So I think that's a rule that we could probably do without. All that the people need to care about is, are you within the corridor or are you not within the corridor? And we'll have marshals there to decide whether someone's violating the rules, and if they are,
That's my question, whether you're going to have marshals there to enforce your
zero
rules.
tolerance. Yes. Zero tolerance.
Okay, that's
And
the
the
answer.
reality for the council is, I mean, let's think about this. Reality is, no matter what, with an ordinance or without an ordinance, there will be times where there'll be somebody who'll be out there, not affiliated with our group.
We understand that.
And so we'll do our best to stop that when we can.
Right.
But the reality is we can only control the people that within our group, and we control that by virtue of their streamers and their membership within the group. And if they're not complying with the rules, that membership gets yanked.
So the marshal will be a representative of your group?
That's right.
We have a compromise from all the members to be marshals at any time they're on the beach, and they're doing it, and they're doing
But
it really well.
that's not-
So,
Okay, so I'm just wondering if you're going to have a marshal person responsible during the period of time, like I think they have over at Crandon, and Crandon North location, they have somebody there making sure that things are done the right way. Are you planning on having the same thing happen on our beach?
Absolutely.
if required, we would, yeah.
Well, I mean,
So let's
Well, I
require
put
it.
it into the
It'll be part of
ordinance.
the enforcement.
That's not a problem.
Exactly.
Right?
That's not a problem.
Put it into the ordinance. One other quick question we hadn't talked about, which was brought up, was the concept of the buddy system. Should we be requiring everyone to have a buddy for safe body dragging out and coming back in and having control of that kite from the beach?
There should not be, I mean.
Should that be
for
an
safety
element of
reasons,
this
There should
ordinance?
always be a buddy system, so no one should launch the kite independently. There should always be at least two people on the beach if someone wants to.
So that should be.
That's
so
a
as we describe mode of
that's a good
operation or
safety
operation.
suggestion. As far as one thing that Vice Mayor Kaplan said about the ratio, okay? We do have 110 members, okay? Saturday was probably one of the best days we've had in 6 months to kite, and there were 10 kites on the beach. So the ratio is probably, 1 to 10. At Crandon, they have 500 members, and the restriction is 25 kites. So you can see, that it's livable. We are busy professionals. That's what we are. We can't do kite as much as we
Are
want.
your 110 members all level 3 and above?
Right now, we have certified 90. We're still working on it. For example, I tested 2 potential members this weekend, and they were not level 3. So I told them, no, I'm sorry, you can't ride. Go get some lessons. You need about 6 hours of lessons. So they were really upset, but they can't ride.
Where were you testing them?
At Miami Kiteboarding.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
If I may, just briefly, if the council's going the direction I think the council might be going in, and that is taking advantage of a compromise, so to speak, between the people who oppose kiteboarding and the people who are in favor of kiteboarding, I think that's a terrific way to go at this point. It makes tremendous sense. It's a win-win for everybody. Let the council see how it works out, and we can revisit this issue of access in the future. Where and when. I do appreciate the efforts of Allison and Frank to keep a mind open for the opportunities that may be available later on. If for some reason it doesn't work out where we currently might have a compromise. But for now, I agree with Brett. It makes the most sense is to go forward with the concept of doing it by the old Silver Sands, where there is nothing at this point, and that's what I at least would recommend. But anyway, thank you for your consideration. Any other questions about rules? I mean, those details we can get into later on at some point.
So guys,
But it's up to you, of course.
procedurally speaking, we have a resolution before us that has been moved and seconded. But we've made some revisions or given guidance to council as to the language and how we need it to read when it comes back. Given the revisions, should we bring it back as a first reading? Would we actually have the language, or do you all feel comfortable as amended by Frank's suggestions?
Question for,
Or you didn't really, you were just making suggestions?
I have a
Just
question.
Karen.
If we move to approve what's been proposed as to basic wording in the ordinance and the location that we've discussed, can we make modifications such as expanding on enforcement and getting into those details and bring it back on the second reading, and it would still be the same motion that we just sort of tune up in the process and bring it back for second reading? Because it would basically be the same rules, expanding the definitions, same location, and just clean it up that way. At least now we can get started on this thing. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think first of all, just a couple clarifications. It's a ordinance and not a resolution.
I'm sorry.
And
Look down and
I think it's fine. The title's broad enough. I think everyone's on notice. We can work within the confines of the title and make changes between first and second reading. One other clarification. I'm not sure, Frank, if you actually made a motion. I think you kind of made.
No, he didn't. We're going to need to.
There will need to be a motion and a second to, and once we get those amendments, we will, work with Jenny with the minutes and make sure we get everything.
Motion to incorporate all of the language and changes that Frank suggested.
Wait, I have some more discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to say something too before.
I'd like to, okay. How wide is the beachfront in front of the Silver Sands?
Excuse me?
How wide is the beachfront
It's-
in front of the Silver
Wide
Sands?
enough to kite surf on.
It was
or
pretty,
they
it
wouldn't
was
like it.
very wide.
Come on,
Based
I
on our-
mean,
How many feet?
yes,
About a third of that, maybe.
huh?
A third of the Commodore, maybe. But it was wider than the narrow parts.
Okay, so my question is, how much of the Silver Sands beach is going to be taken out?
Oh, the width part.
Yes, width.
I would say the width must have been almost 250 or 300 feet, and it would look like about 1/3.
It's
Roughly.
basically from the easement at Oceana to approximately the sandbar pad.
Yeah.
If you can think of where the sandbar pad is.
Might have been 25% to 30%, somewhere around there. It looked like from the distance.
of the total beach in front of the center.
I think so, yeah.
It doesn't extend to the area where the
I have
pool
to
is
double check it.
located.
Has anybody talked to these people from the Silver Sands?
You want to?
No,
No, that's definitely out there.
they should definitely have the right to come over here and tell us what they think,
It
I'm really
doesn't-
concerned about this. I mean, I know you guys, I want to get this done. I want kite surfing to exist on our beach. I don't think that we're doing this right. I think we should explore it at the southernmost boundary and just on the other side, if we can work with, the state park, that would be the perfect place for me, okay? Because I know that there's no one there, just like there is no one at the Miami-Dade section where you kite surf. There's no one's there unless they're kite surfing. So.
I mean, a couple
doing
things.
this in front of the Silver Sands has a lot of issues for me.
I don't think we're looking to make this a permanent location. I think.
But why don't we do it right instead of doing a temporary location? And I'm just wondering, I mean, we've gone this far. There is a place to kite surf right now, the Miami-Dade part. There was only, how many people allowed? There was only 10 people out there, even in the best day. So
What
is
are
this
you
really
talking about
something
now?
that we need to, rush to it at this point? Or can we continue to work the way until we come back the next time or whatever and make it right?
This is the challenge as I see it. We've had residents for years coming before us asking for regulation, saying that it needs to be regulated for safety reasons, okay? We have studied this for several years. We've had workshops on this issue. We have a situation right now that pretty much the whole beach is open for kite surfing because it is not regulated. So to me, it would be, on my part, irresponsible not to have on a temporary basis for a regulation to see if it works reasonably and to keep our residents safe. I think not taking action and kicking the can down the road is unacceptable to our residents.
But I resent that I'm trying to suggest that we kick the can down the road. I want this to be addressed as soon as possible, okay?
Okay.
But at the same time, I don't know that, I see potential issues here, especially with Silver Sands people and everybody else. I mean, it is going to have an impact on their property. And
Allison, Katie, and then Gary.
100% share your concerns. And from what I see is we have a need to do something, albeit temporary, whatever. And our choices really are temporarily ban or try this other location. Had all of these things been in effect at the previous location up by the Commodore Club, I don't know that we'd be sitting here. But those residents have been ignored for years, is how they feel. And they're not willing to try it with all the rules and everything. And I think we have to respect that. But I also think that we can give a shot to the kiteboarders with the rules in effect in this location and see if maybe the problems won't arise with the regulations in place and with them on board.
Katie and then Gary.
I'm shaking my head
that I'd
because I
like to
mean I
add-
agree with you.
Because of your concerns is exactly why I started where I did, which was I didn't want to deal with the location, but I wanted to put regulations in place to get a feeling of control and a framework that people who want to kiteboard would either follow the rules and do it safely and provide a good environment on our beaches of coexisting, or they wouldn't. And then if they didn't, then we had a reason to say no. But we have never been able to come to any conclusion on this.
I don't want to say no.
No, I'm not saying that.
I don't want you to misunderstand.
No,
I do
because
not
this is
want to
right-
say no.
This is right where I was. So now we're looking to find this location. And the way that I look at this, as far as this location, I think of it somewhat temporary. In that best case scenario, it will happen very safely. We can revisit and we can expand it to other parts of the beaches because it's being done well and it's controlled. If that doesn't happen, the fact that it's in that location, one, allows for a change of practice, which someone mentioned to me, a change of behavior on our beaches, and it allows our village, who needs to do the enforcement, to have a very controlled area by which they're enforcing it. So it allows us to successfully control this in a better way. And then maybe in a year, we're able to look at it differently and not unfairly burden one specific spot on our beaches. And maybe it opens up in the state. I don't know, the state part.
I wish you wouldn't have said unfairly burdened.
Well, I mean, you know, finding one specific location is not, nobody wants it in their backyard. That's what we've heard, and that's why we wrestled with it.
Right.
So if
But-
you could just think of it in that direction, it might be easier.
Gary.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt amending the ordinance, amending Chapter 4, including all of the regulations and conditions that are contained in the ordinance, and in particular, amending Section 4-33-6 to state that kiteboarding will be allowed in the area designated by us, and make that a part of the motion of the ordinance.
Don't we have to say what area it is?
Yeah, all right, so the area
Name it.
that we have talked about as the Sonesta Channel.
Maybe we don't, do we?
Yes.
I mean, she
we
needs,
do.
she needs to have the language.
The Sonesta Channel.
Can I,
An easement,
The
easement.
mayor made a motion to
I'll second the
incorporate
mayor's motion,
Frank's.
because the mayor's motion
amendment.
included the
You're
need,
correct.
the need to identify the zone.
Yes.
Did it also incorporate Councilmember, it's all included?
this is what my comment wanted to be on the motion that's on the table. I feel that it should stay in first reading. We should have our attorneys draft this so we can read it. I really am very unclear of what's going into this. I know that we made some amendments today. I know there's been an email that I've sent. I know that Katie has some changes that she wants to do. I would like to kind of, maybe if we can go through our attorney and make sure that everybody's ideas get incorporated, and we look at this one more time, and then we try to get it over to the second with minor amendments at that time. I think we have some major amendments that are coming up right now.
Can we still do that between first
Yes,
and second?
you
right
can.
before, and then
Yes,
that way
you
we're
can.
moving along a little
And in
bit?
the event that we're not ready at second reading, we can defer it to a day certain. But I think there's a lot of consensus with your comments and Frank's comments, and I think we're going to get, I mean.
The problem is I'm very unclear of what is the motion that we're putting on the table includes what amendments. I know that we've said some amendments haven't even been said yet. that we want to
Usually,
have in there.
yeah, usually, we do this a lot. It's enabling us to move things forward. So what'll happen is we will collectively add our suggestions to this draft, which, remember, came about at a time when we didn't have a zone picked. When this came up the first time, one of the reasons that we didn't take action on it, in my opinion then, was because we recognized that without a launch and recovery zone, we were maybe avoiding the question of whether this was intrinsically unsafe, where you're in proximity to bathers. Now we have identified a zone. We have probably 20 other comments, both textual and regulatory. We'll add them in. Chad will deal with them. We'll see a second draft in the next several days before our next meeting. And as Myra said, if we're not ready to deal with it at second reading, we'll defer it.
But this gets the ball rolling with adequate time to change whatever we need to change.
There's another
Keeping in
element.
mind that we will probably be here 3 years from now if we try to incorporate everything that everybody wants and then agree to it. So let's just get this started and hopefully get it finished very quickly.
There's one other reason I'd like to move on this right now. As things stand right this minute, this activity is either unregulated or it's unlawful, and it may be both. So we need to fix this.
And Frank, I share that sense of urgency as well, which is why I totally share it. Yes, please.
Could we add something to this that would bring it back before us within 12 months to review it?
The sunset provision.
Oh, yes,
Sunsets.
we've discussed that.
All right.
That was discussed.
But that's
last-
not,
Well, it's been part of the comments. I think
Sunset provision.
we discussed it
Frank
as a
brought- Frank
temporary.
brought it up in his comments.
Right.
Yeah.
But the question of the methodology to create a sunset is something that we'll see in the second draft.
Correct. So, Madam Clerk, if you could please call the question, roll
I
call.
just want to be clear, because I think it's important.
Yes.
On the Sonesta channel.
Channel, an easement.
I think what would be helpful if the manager would bring back an aerial depicting that area, so we can visualize it. Because I don't think everyone understands what the Sonesta channel means. I know there was a description. It was described as from the Oceana easement to
We'll do that.
the Silver Sands Pat, but I think that
We'll get you that. to
Point
put
well
in it.
taken, and just as part of the on-site meeting that we had, that was a sunshine meeting where the whole village was in fact invited, that was part of, I mean, we have a visual, but I think everyone needs to be on the same page.
What is the width of the easement?
The easement at the Oceana?
yeah, I think it's 25 feet. I think.
Yeah,
But this would begin north of the boundary of that easement.
correct.
This wouldn't encroach on the easement.
Why not?
Because people sit there. People actually put Adirondack chairs out there and they sit,
Well, there are two easements. Please call the
I mean-
question.
I'll do a roll call. Councilmember De La Cruz?
You have to start with me?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Gross?
Yes.
Mayor Lindsay?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Petros?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan?
yes.
The ordinance is adopted on first reading, and the second reading of the ordinance will be held January 23rd.
Can I
Do
just
we
make
need
a
yes,
clarification?
more time.
I know that Brett and Katie both had comments also. Where they weren't a part of that motion, correct?
Yes.
Oh, they were.
No,
a
they
part.
were.
They
Okay.
were.
And Brett's are in an email that,
I have it. I just want to make this for the record. So,
It was a part of the motion.
okay, got it. All right. And I think you were going to ask, is it too soon for January?
That was my concern. Are you going to be able to do that?
We've got to sit down. I mean, the issue is that, remember, it's 2 weeks away, but the agenda deadline is Friday?
No,
No,
When is it? Next
Wednesday.
it would be Wednesday.
Wednesday? It's a week from tomorrow.
I can
have
call,
10
I can give
days.
you a call
So-
tomorrow and review the changes, and we can.
All right, we'll do our best to.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Who would be,
Any other questions for us?
No.
No.
We're done.
We're done.
For now.
who would be responsible for coming up with sort of the agreement of compliance of kiteboarders? Would that, I mean, do we have a draft of that too?
I believe we have a draft of it, and I think their rules and their compliance documents.
But we're going to be registering them through the village.
Yeah,
so we need a compliance.
Yes, we
document
do.
On our side, and should we have Chad start to draft
And
something?
Chad, have you seen theirs to start from? York?
I'm not sure if I've seen what the Cranon
Yes,
Park
York, I
has.
called you.
But it's going to take a little bit of time. I think the manager's going to have to get things in order as far as the permitting and everything else. So we're going to need a little bit of lead time.
But we don't need that before we pass this.
No, I think that part of the amendment is going to likely say that those who register with the village shall acknowledge that they have read and received a copy of the rules, and which rules shall be, I guess, created by the manager, I guess, and we'll handle it that way.
There are drafts floating around.
The one comment that I had made the last time that we didn't put in, but I thought we had agreed to, was instead of just simply signing and like an acknowledgement and understanding, was actually like almost like a one-pager little like quiz of demonstrating your knowledge of what they are.
I didn't put anything in here because at the last meeting, there wasn't an amendment to Georgia
Gotcha.
anything. If the will of the council is to do that, we can put something together either way.
Chad, would it be helpful to have council members email me all their amendments, and then that way we can just insert it into the ordinance? That way, comments just such as Allison's that maybe were not captured at first reading.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that would be helpful.
Okay.
That may not be part part of the ordinance, it might be closed. Don, we are so done with this, but as a courtesy, I'll let you speak, but we are done with the issue.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
John Lewisburg, 177 Ocean Lane Drive. Since you chose to amend the rules to permit the kiteboarders to speak, I am coming up here not to refute anything they had to say. I don't know that it was within the rules that you proceed because we didn't understand that there was a second bite at the apple. Put that aside. The only reason I am up here is I just heard this discussion about delay and delay and delay. And all I want to call your attention to is the testimony of Mike O'Brien tonight, who has never come here before, who pointed out that one of the people who was very prominent in the village damn near got either hurt or killed by a loose kiteboarder over the weekend. We have pointed out, as our president, Greg Rosen, has said, over and over again, these things happen. So it may seem nice to you to wait another week, wait another day. The lawyers are busy, everybody's on vacation. I'm here to tell you on behalf of our constituency, your view of the urgency that you expressed tonight is correct. It has got to be done. It has got to be done now. I am totally pleased that you're reaching a consensus, okay? I understand there are all the difficulties. I want to congratulate you for what you've done. But I cannot help, I have to come up here on behalf of the people who've been here and say the time is now. The time is not the delay because somebody doesn't know how to write a provision, okay? This has been done over and over again, and I just urge you to do your due diligence. I commend you for what you've done. I'm sorry to take any more time, but I think you need to be reinforced of what the atmosphere here, and I think our kiteboarding colleagues were very, very appropriate tonight in suggesting let's get this fixed the way we've been talking about it.
Thank you, noted. And just for
And my apologies.
clarification, I did open public comment for the ordinance, and it was open to everyone. And
I appreciate that, but that's not usually within the rules. We just don't understand when we come here. Tell us to talk at the beginning or tell us to talk when it comes up. That was my only concern. I just didn't understand.
you have, when it's an ordinance, you have two opportunities, at general public comment or for the ordinance.
Thank you for the education. I appreciate it.
Next item under reports and recommendations, mayor and council members. The first item would be Fast Track Institute together with update on Freebie and Optimus Ride partnership and Live Ride Share conference from August, and that would be Mayor Lindsay and Councilmember De La Cruz.
I actually,
Sorry.
Reports and recommendations.
I'm not sure exactly what the point of privilege. I wanted to discuss something on the consent agenda and got sidetracked by our 11th hour memo that we got. Can we bring it back next time?
Sure. Yeah, as a discussion item, we can bring it back.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the car.
Okay, it was approved. The resolution was approved during the consent agenda
So is it,
item. So you can discuss it, but the item was
but will it
approved.
already have been purchased?
I'll take no action if you're asking for an
Thank you.
additional, so I'll take no action until the
She
final
was a
discussion.
yes vote, so she could theoretically
Bring it back.
So
Okay.
she's bringing it back.
Thank you.
Then, I'm sorry, so it's the two discussion items relating to Fast Track and Freebie and Optimus Ride, and that would be Mayor Lindsay and Councilmember De La Cruz.
Absolutely. Folks, I was approached by a couple of residents from Key Biscayne who are actually innovators. They've come up with a Fast Track Institute, which is an international almost think tanker institute trying to find solutions to urban problems. They had actually come up with, they had made an agreement with Miami-Dade County in August, and they were tasked with addressing Miami-Dade County's mobility challenges using exponential technologies to come up with practical, innovative traffic solutions that are scalable to all communities. Now, they've been going through this exercise with Miami-Dade County. They are funded through the Knight Foundation, through Miami-Dade County, and a couple of other private grants. And they approached us in the middle of December because they had been working with Armando Codina in Doral and a couple of other areas to pilot the solutions they had come up with Miami-Dade County. And because they were looking around in their own home, they simply invited us to act as, to pilot their innovations if we were interested. They thought that there is a little bit of a sense of urgency, and I can get one of the principals. Unfortunately, both principals are out of town right now, but I could get them on the phone. Their concern was that there is a lot of interest from other municipalities, and if we've had at all an interest in exploring and pursuing this, that we should, enter into a letter of intent. There's no contractual, there is no economic obligation, and it is simply an opportunity to work with an innovative group under the guise of Miami-Dade County. There really is no downsize, and there really is no commitment from us in terms of actually going through with it. It was just to get to the next level, to understand what the options were, whether they're a good fit for us or not. It is, and I spoke to Melissa White today because I know that she was coming up with her mobility report that should have been done, and she very graciously deferred it last December because our agenda was so large. So again, this is time sensitive. It's an opportunity to explore, no commitment from us, and it's about using disruptive. I mean, one of the things they are looking at is driverless cars. This may be, in terms of implementation, far away, but it's an opportunity to be in the front of the line. So this is it. No commitment, no financial commitment, no skin off our teeth, no detriment to us, and that was it. Yes.
Great. I didn't want to take action on this because, I mean to be polite, this letter of intent says nothing. And the resolution authorizes the manager to enter into an agreement to implement this letter of intent, which is a lot of gobbledygook that says nothing.
So the letter of intent was the draft of what was being used in other communities, and I agree. It says nothing, but we're really not committing to anything either.
With this exception, when you read behind this, and I want to bring this forward.
Sure.
I'm not oppositional. This just wasn't ripe for action, in my opinion. We have a confidentiality undertaking, and there's a provision in the letter of intent that says that anything that develops from whatever this process turns out to be winds up, in a sense, being owned by the prime contractor. It commits to a subcontract with FIU, which may be fine. It seems to me to involve an exclusive dealing arrangement, and I wasn't sure where we stood with other innovators with whom we've spent a year and a half speaking, which you'll report on. So I'm not oppositional at all, and I think these are great people, and although I think the PowerPoint is, as you said, bordering on incomprehensible, I'd like to find out whether this is a helpful thing for us, but not by taking action on this letter of intent.
I think it's...
Can I speak?
I was responding to Frank. I think it was...
We should all have an opportunity to speak.
And you will as soon as I'm done. Thank you. Again, and I listen, I'm hearing what you're saying. I think there was no risk and no harm in doing what we're doing yet, because we're not actually, there's a letter of intent, but we haven't contracted to the final. And if the resolution should read that the contract comes back and that it's not, for consideration, which is what we do anyway, that's fine.
So I'd like to move forward with this. We have a meeting coming up. I didn't think this was ripe for actual an action, but I'm interested, so let's bring it back.
Bring it back. Yes.
Okay, so I agree. I think it's very interesting to work with the people that are involved with this Fast Track Institute. My concern was very much Frank's. I read this 5 times, and I couldn't figure out what it was until I got other materials, and then I realized what it was. Just as disclosure, Mr. Ferre is my son's roommate in college's father. So, I mean, we're very close. And I just want to make sure that he understands that I have nothing negative about the effort. We just need to do it right. And I think that we could certainly look at this from a mutually beneficial perspective as opposed to against anything that we're doing now. I mean, we do have certain things that are going on right now, which we already did agree to work with Optimus Ride and other things, and we'll hear from Melissa if she hasn't left.
And, you know, just to talk to that, well, I thought you said, we'll hear from Melissa. I thought you were done. So, yes, continue, please.
What were you saying?
I was just going to say that they're not mutually exclusive. And I think the idea this is a pilot, we are
May
not.
not be, but
they are not.
This doesn't say it. I read it 5 times and I couldn't figure out what it was saying. I apologize, but maybe it was missing a page or something. But it's not clear as to what we're trying to do with this particular letter of intent. And for us to have a proposed ordinance that gives somebody,
Listen, I'm sorry that Dr. Ferrer didn't contact you. We will bring it back at the next meeting.
Right. Okay.
Here, I think that's the bottom line. Yes.
It would also be very interesting when I looked them up and I read the news articles and the different presentations. And again, I had a hard time understanding exactly what was actually happening here. But I did see that they were given some funds by the Knight Foundation. And I think it's working with Miami-Dade County, right?
Correct.
So I believe they started in the end of August and they had a 16-week or so. I'm guessing we're pretty much at that 16-week or we're past. So I'm kind of interested in what did they do and what were the outcomes there?
And that's, I think that because of the hurricane, they've had delays in the final product.
They're still in the process.
And so what was explained to me, and, obviously this needs to come back. This was just a preliminary step in what the ultimate proposal is. It's a preliminary step showing that we have interest, that yes, we would like to be considered, and we would like to consider you. I mean, it really is.
What would be part of the Miami-Dade County?
It would be the implementation of what that Miami-Dade County study found. Why? Because we're contained and we're small scale, looking for things that can be scaled up, but that they can control the variables very easily. That's what they thought was interesting about Key Biscayne, for that last mile concept, which seems to be the biggest problem in transportation for Miami-Dade County generally. They've got, buses and trains, but that last mile is extremely problematic. We are that last mile.
Can I just ask why this, in doing an initiative like this, and this is an education for me, but why is it a resolution? Why aren't we just having a discussion with this group and moving forward in that way instead of
Katie, because that's what they articulated.
Is that what they asked for?
Yes, exactly. I mean, and in fact, this is modeled after the letter of intent that Doral entered into. Everything is. They don't have a final report. They're identifying potential.
I mean, would they be willing to do this in a different way that seems less cumbersome?
Well, I think they would come back with a contract. They would come back with substance. This is just very preliminary.
But before a contract, can they come and
yes,
present
they
what they
will come
do?
to the next meeting.
That would be great.
Both principals were out, and they contacted us. They thought it was. Timing was sensitive, but then they were not, the holidays happened. And this was brought this way because their request was for a letter of intent. That's why it was done, and that's what was done in other municipalities. That's,
It'd be great to have them come and talk to us next time whenever they have an opportunity.
well, I'm sure they would love to. They really want Key Biscayne to be a pilot site.
And
They're very proud of their community. They think that we do a great job and that we should be a model with this as well. So I'm sure it'll happen and it'll get resolved. It's taking that first step.
Next item, is that okay? Oh, I'm sorry.
Is Melissa gonna, isn't this part of the whole thing?
I'm so sorry.
That's the next item.
Melissa White, 370 Heather Lane. Congratulations. You guys got really far today. I'm exhausted. Hold on. Okay. This is supposed to be, this presentation was supposed to be done in December, and it's an update on the public philanthropic partnership for transportation, local transportation that we started in November 2015 when Dr. Kelly was on council. It started with Key Ride, which has evolved into Freebie, and that's the on-demand transportation system. We thought it would be helpful if we went into the way the village is solved or addressing transit and mobility needs in general. So you guys have done quite a bit of work under various councils, from traffic calming studies, safe routes to school, extended and expanded green paint for bike safety, Crandon smart traffic lights, which should be coming soon, pedestrian safety crosswalks. In March to December of 2015, the Cordino Group did a village transit mobility study, which was over 100 pages, and offered both what the issues are locally and what the possible solutions would be. From that draft report, and through one of the donors to Key Biscayne Community Foundation, the Easton family, we worked with Dr. Kelly to bring the first genesis of on-demand Key Ride. And again, we tried to work with a local company. The first year was a learning experience, and it's evolved into what is now Freebie. The local transportation needs are right now being met by Freebie, Lime Bike, and what hopefully will soon be Key Loop. And then in 2018, which Optimus Ride should be implementing what hopefully will be one of the first cities to test autonomous vehicles. And again, I didn't have a chance to review the report, but we're always open to working with residents on new initiatives. And I know that Ramiro from Optimus Ride has talked to the people from Fast Track, and there's some synergy there. So that might help for their next, when they actually come to council and discuss it. The foundation's partnership, like I said, was November 17th, 2015. Since that date, with first on-demand system and then Optimus Ride, it has grown. We worked with the county through a meeting with Optimus Ride and the Miami Foundation on Live, Ride, Share collaboration. The village and the foundation were one of the silver sponsors. We had our very own Parks and Recreation Director, Todd Hofferberth, present at the conference. We look forward to continued work with Miami-Dade County. Carlos Cruz has been wonderful. He is offered, when we do roll out the autonomous vehicle, using one of the county vehicles to do so. So I'm hopeful. I think there are really cool things in the pipeline. This is the conference. These are some stats from Freebie users. At the end of 2017, there were 14,000 total passengers. Look at the gender differences.
That's fascinating.
I know, right? And the age user.
Do you think it's because guys walk?
No.
Can't figure out how to use the app.
This goes into the rides, the total requests, completed rides, rides from app versus flag downs, freebie time. These are averages. We do run into peak times when it takes a lot longer than it should. I'm working very closely with Councilmember Dela Cruz to try to get those down and try to figure out ways to improve the system. Todd and the Community Center and Parks and Recreation have been amazing. John's support for this is really, I think, where we were with year one on demand and where we are today. I believe everybody would agree it's leaps and bounds, and I hope that that continues to improve. Average driver rating, this is off of a system of 5, so it's not bad. And I can send the report to anyone who wants all of the data. We have a lot of data on drop-off and pickup locations. You can guess where you'd think they'd be versus where they actually are. Thought they were very interesting. And then this brings us to Circulator. If you remember, at the same time that the council moved forward with On Demand, Councilmember Taylor wanted to make sure that Circulator, what is now being called KB Loop, would happen, and the discussion has evolved. With council permission, we hope that this could be launched really soon. We have 2 additional vehicles from Freebie that would go in a Crandon Harbor Loop. The funding would be reimbursed by CITT. And we have done some testing. We have 2 ADA compliant vehicles. We've tested some bus stops. And we've gotten, with Route 1, it was a longer wait time. The feeling is that that's not going to work for the people that are waiting for the Circulator or the KB Loop. So we've gotten it down to 18 minutes on a light test and 25 minutes on a heavy test. These are different locations between the 2 routes. And then Optimus Ride. This goes back to October 2016. Key Biscayne resident Ramiro came to us, and he has moved his family down here. It's an MIT spinoff company. They've met with the manager and staff. Then they came to you guys and discussed a partnership. There was no funding requirement. It was just data and test gathering, and the idea that our city could be on the forefront of actually having a municipality using autonomous vehicles. We also thought that the collection of the data would be very beneficial. Councilmember Dela Cruz actually went to MIT and visited. This year, there's been meetings between Miami Foundation and Miami-Dade County Transportation. And they have a rollout plan for 2018. It involves a 3-vehicle fleet, and the map shows where the testing would be done. Starting May 2018, network design. They were tasked with coming up with where the vehicles could be stored and where their engineers would work, and they've spent the last year working on that. They have investors within this community that have been very supportive. One of them is in the audience as well. And I'm going to leave Lime Bike for Derek, because I believe Derek's going to go over it. But that's part of the entire transportation and kind of high-level picture of what you guys are trying to do and what you actually have accomplished. I spoke to Todd, and the next survey that goes out can be transportation-oriented. And there's a very good survey company that they use called ETC. Is that correct, Todd? So we could put into the next survey how do you feel about Line Bike? How do you feel about on-demand system? How do you feel about KB Loop? And get feedback, see where they want to go with autonomous vehicles. But I think what you guys have done as a community and being responsive to our needs is pretty impressive. So give yourselves a pat on the back. Any questions?
I think it was a great presentation. I didn't know that Optimus Ride was still
Alive.
here, so
I
that's
did not know
great.
that.
We owed you this presentation in September. Obviously, the hurricane hit. Then we got catch up in October. We were
Everybody
supposed
blames
to
the
present.
hurricane on everything. Huh?
What?
Everybody blames the hurricane.
I blame it. I'm
It's all
still
Irma's
trying to catch
fault.
up on like a month of my life.
What about the metro buses? Is there a possibility of limiting their paths if
So the
circulating
idea
route is successful?
Frank and Jim Tainter and Dr. Kelly, all, as well as others, threw around was one day if we really got the circulator running well and we're able to take the B bus off of Harbor Drive, saving the their little roundabouts, and also just providing an internal loop. You know, these are all things that council has been discussing, and what we've tried to do, I think, in our working relationship with village administration, which I believe has been great, is respond to these and figure out what works and doesn't work, and take it from a very micro level of actual resident complaints to getting them to whoever our vendor is, correcting whatever problem there is, and then the high level of working with like Miami-Dade County on Live, Ride, Share.
And just, Katie, for this, just for the sake of history, one of the challenges with eliminating the metro buses, which I think are an eyesore and we would love to see, is that it actually, for our day workers and our housekeepers and what have you, having them get off a bus to then get on something else is a little bit of a challenge. So finding that sweet spot where it's not a burden is a challenge.
If it's faster for them.
If it's faster, right. So that's where there's, you know, you got to think
Or gets
about
them
it.
closer to their spot.
Might explain the gender gap too.
Yes.
You know what's not happening? That population, I think, isn't using Freebie to get to Crandon. They could, but they're not.
Freebie is so busy. Freebie is so, and thank you very much. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Line Bike anyway to set it up.
What do you think of Cliff's theory as to why men aren't using the
They don't know how to use the app. Do you have the app downloaded?
I have the app downloaded, and I think I'm pretty representative among my gender.
Have you used it?
Do you use the app?
Yes.
I opened it once, saw it.
Well, folks, and I guess in terms of how does Fast Track, how can it be incorporated into this, we really don't know. But they're trying to bring disruptive technology. It could be something that we don't even know about.
Let's find out.
We should not limit ourselves. We also, if Miami-Dade is working with them, that's something we should be cognizant of.
They are just in case.
Have to learn more.
And they actually had.
So next item, please.
Next item is a motion to allow Colleen Castile to retain beach renourishment team members. Councilmember Gross.
This is bringing back an item that came up at the last meeting in order to give everyone the opportunity to see the materials that were distributed by both of these consultants and make it part of the agenda. So we've had presentations from them both. We know how they fit into the team with Colleen Castile. Just to remind everyone, Spencer Crowley is an attorney with Ackerman Centerfit, and he's also been very involved with the Florida Inland Waterway Division for many, many years. And he, in fact, specializes in the kind of thing we're going to need to have done in order to get a major beach renourishment project. He's worked very, very closely with Jim Davenport, who is a lobbyist and a consultant on the federal level and specializes in exactly the kind of project that we're looking to do. And this is the major beach renourishment and restoration project that we hope will get going. So you heard from all three of them at the last meeting. The materials here, so I would just like to go ahead and make the motion, and then we can discuss it, that we do retain both of these individuals, Jim Davenport and Spencer Crowley, as part of the team with Colleen Castile to move forward our beach restoration project.
I'll second.
Has our attorneys looked at the contracts just to check, to make sure everything looks good?
Chad, have you looked at the
I didn't see
materials?
anything there that you guys reviewed it.
It's actually, it's really going to be a sub to Colleen.
Yes.
So I think because underneath her agreement, she has the agreement anticipated her building a team. So
no obligations to the city directly to
it's
them?
really going to be, it was more for benefit to see, but I mean, I effectively, we're going to have to speak with Colleen, but I anticipate that we'll have to increase her agreement to accommodate these subs, basically.
Well, it will, and the financial part of this, not to interrupt, the financial part of this is that Spencer Crowley, being an attorney, is really going to be the person that oversees this. He's not going to have that much on-hands involvement in actually doing the work. His billing rate is, as you can see, is $550 an hour. He estimates it'll be a maximum of $5,000 a month. I anticipate that it probably might be that in some months, and in other months it would probably be closer to zero. On the other hand, Jim Davenport's contract is for $6,000 a month for 1 year. And as Chad said, both of these would be subs under Colleen's contract with us, and she would have the authority to, supervise and recommend continuing or changing or whatever. We did that, so we know why we did it. So,
Gary, thank you so much for taking the lead on this. I think we all anticipated that we would need a team, both on the state and federal level. Time is ticking away. The state legislative session started today, and we have, individuals in Washington, D.C. who will be leaving in 11 months, 10 months. So, and I know, Lucho, you want to speak to this? Does anybody else? But
Another question.
fair enough. So, thank you. And Lucho, and then Katie.
Okay, so I'm trying to, other than beach renourishment, which to me means picking up sand and putting it on the beach, are we looking at other things also?
well, in essence, that's what it is in its simplest form, but it involves getting the necessary approvals from Army Corps, and Durham, and it involves getting significant funding from those agencies.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, other than moving sand and putting it on the beach, are we going to be looking at other things such as potential sea structures in order to delay the
berms and the what have you?
Yeah.
I think that's what we instructed.
Well,
I think that's what we discussed, right?
This is not, that's why I said in its simplest terms, if we can get the Army Corps involved in this, and we can get this project done the right way, the way other coastline communities have gotten it done, it includes ways to keep the sand there. It includes artificial reefs. It includes planting marine life. It includes all kinds of things that the study by the engineers and hopefully the Army Corps will determine, based on our beach and our situation, what will be the best buffer zone and the best way. Because remember, the thing that mostly erodes beaches is wave action. Right. And to the extent you can limit the wave action and capture beach sand that does run off the beach, that will eliminate the need to keep doing this over and over again. So yeah, this is a major engineering.
I actually circulated something that I had read. I don't know,
the oysters.
Oysters. Oyster beds are being used.
Right. So
not sure our water's cold enough here, but it's an idea.
Well, we have plenty of oysters of some sort.
But that's all the details that hopefully we'll.
Yes, so long as we keep our mind open that it's not just bringing more sand and replenishing sand, but also trying to stop the sand from leaving in the first place. It's.
Well, That's why we're bringing these people in, because they certainly know a lot more about it than we do, and this is what they've done many, many times, so.
Katie?
Quick question on this. As she assembles her team, are we looking at this comprehensively as far as cost as well? I noticed both of these kind of have a monthly amount, but I didn't, and you mentioned that the lobbyist said he would be only working for 1 year.
Well, it's a one-year agreement.
It's a
We can
one-year
extend it, or she can extend it, or we'll mutually extend it, depending on what we think of his activity.
Can Colleen provide us with an estimate of total cost based on time she thinks we're going to need these team?
Well, the total cost is going to be for Colleen and Jim Davenport based on their contract. It's a monthly fee. So we know what that is, and it's not to exceed. Spencer Crowley, being an attorney, his cost will be maximum of $5,000 a month. So we know on the outside, we're looking at those two fees plus a maximum of $5,000, but that $5,000, it's not going to be there most of the time.
I had mentioned to the manager also, it'd be helpful for me anyway, as we approve each piece of this, to continue to see a larger picture so that I understand what we're doing, and I don't know how to get that.
A timeline or benchmarks?
Could you clarify that, Katie? Because I'm not sure I understand what you're asking for.
Timeline or benchmarks?
Yeah, a timeline of how long we're going to need certain people, and then also because we also have the other firm, the local firm, that is under her umbrella. So we have 3 people under Colleen now, or 3 professional groups.
You're talking about the engineer.
Yes.
That's a totally different type of a discipline. And
I'm not,
one of the benefits of using the Army Corps is that if they will agree to the project and to shepherd it, they'll provide all of that, engineering and structural and design, because if we end up with a 150,000 cubic yard project for our beach, and that's what it possibly could be, and this is what Lucio was speaking to, the engineering and design work of this project is going to be significant. And
I'm just saying from her, it would be nice to get an overall picture as she continues to add firms and people and to understand that, because I will continue to make small decisions, but I can lose sight of the big picture, and I want to do that.
As far as I know, right now, there won't be any other team members added. She believes that the team that will be in place with these 2 additions is going to be pretty much all they need. And as far as updates, we're expecting to get regular monthly updates as to their progress, both in terms of what they're doing, what they've accomplished, and how much we're spending, unless there's absolutely nothing to report that month.
Well, and sort of a projected final cost of all of this based on a time frame.
That's
I
going
know
to be
it's loose, but
that's going to be impossible at this point, because this is the very beginning of a very, very long project, and nobody right now can tell exactly where it's going to end up, and whether we're going to end up with federal funding or Army Corps involved, and if so, in what way, or are we going to be mostly with state funding? We just don't know yet. What we're trying to do is assemble the best team we can with the most clout to get us the best options possible, because this, if it's a 150,000 cubic yard project, we're looking at $15 to $20 million. And we hopefully can get some financial assistance from federal and state to get this done.
Frank, if you let me just interject a second, just because it's pertinent to what Gary's saying. When I spoke to the team very briefly, we discussed setting benchmarks and a timeline so that they knew that they had deadlines to do, and so that when we got these reports, there were things done, but that we saw the end game. And I know deadlines change, what have you, but at least to have on the outset some kind of timeline with benchmarks, I think would be extremely helpful, just so that we meet our goals and we know that there is progress going forward and we're not just spinning our wheels. And I think, Mr. Manager, if that's something, I think that lies with you, if that's okay, that would be, I think, very helpful, and I think that might be addressing everything that Katie was.
Just with one and totally agree, and that is what they intend to do, but just to manage expectations, and one caveat to that, we all know that when we are dealing with Durham and Depp and the Army Corps, the team can tell us what they're planning to do and when they're planning to do it. But as far as how long it will take for these agencies to get on board or get in line or whatever, I mean, it'll just be a shot in the dark.
I
So
realize it's strategy, but I'd like to see the strategy. You know, I
I'm sure
realize
we're
it's
gonna
all-
have
yeah,
that.
Terrific.
Sure.
Frank, thank you for your patience.
I wanted to suggest precisely what you just spoke to. And, you know, I think as an early deliverable, they spoke about it at the presentation the last time, but I'd like to see them memorialize, I think, two parts to the strategy, and it's really more it's more regulatory and legal than it is engineering. I think the engineering follows.
It does.
But I'd like them to memorialize what they told us about the opportunities that we didn't fully leverage in the past. No pointing fingers, but just helping us understand the low-hanging fruit that potentially we didn't reach for, and their strategy for correcting those deficiencies, past deficiencies, and also taking advantage of the collective leverage that this now mighty team, with all the synergies that they all represent, can bring.
Agreed.
So we have a roadmap.
Agreed.
To add one,
Yes.
just to go back to what I was saying on the technical side, these engagement letters are made out to Village of Key Biscayne, so I'm guessing that we just have to go to Colleen and say, can you make it to us from your company? And we're not really approving these ones.
We'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not contracting these folks, she is.
No,
She is, so it
She's
needs to be
gonna-
to
So
her.
what we
to her
have in our
consulting
thing is
us.
all made out to us,
Yeah, but it's,
in our packet.
but the motion's to allow Colleen to retain team
We need
members.
Colleen to make it to us and
Right.
not this to this.
Please call the question.
There was a motion, I believe it was made by Gary and seconded by Frank.
Frank.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item is the appointments to the Pension Board. Mayor Lindsay.
Sure. I would like to nominate Ed London
Second,
for your ratification.
Sorry.
Yes,
All
that's
those
the
in-
only vacancy, correct?
yes.
I believe so, yes.
Now, and one thing, evidently, we're supposed to ratify the fifth person that is actually nominated by the pension board. There's a fifth person that they pick. We don't even know who that is. So if we can have follow-up as to who that fifth person is.
I'd like to have
We've never ratified that.
I'd like to do that, and I don't want to talk about it tonight, but I'd like to look at the constituency in the pension board. It's been a long time. It's been a lot that's happened, and
I can circulate the.
not all of it as inconspicuous and uncontroversial as has ever been the case. And I'd like to revisit the overall constituency, but I'd like to ratify Ed London tonight.
Terrific.
I have a question.
Yes.
Also like to ratify Ed, but we also have the ability on our second pick to extend or replace, do we not?
To extend on our second pick?
Well, there's one that's,
I thought,
we have two people.
correct, but
that
I
we can-
thought that the person had been recently appointed, but I will check.
Who's the other who's
person?
representing us right now?
So right now, we have, well, it was Martha Brochek, whom you elected, and, or, yeah, I'm sorry, who you appointed. I'm exhausted. Okay, who you appointed, and Bill Stevens.
And Servando
And Servando
Parapar.
Parapar.
And Bill was relatively recent. I don't remember offhand.
Not Servando.
Servando's
Servando's appointed by the board.
Servando is not our appointment.
Correct.
Bill Stevens is our appointment.
Is our
Yes.
appointment.
And
Okay,
now
so
I'm
that's,
Bill
that's, and Servando, fair enough.
So when I speak to bringing this back at a later date, I want to look at the ordinance, and I want to look at this board, frankly, constructively, critically. It's been a long time. So we'll have this
I
discussion.
think it's been
at a future
25
date.
years.
Do we want to pick a time that we want to do
If we could do it not at the next meeting, but perhaps the following meeting,
The February 13th.
we will all need time to refresh ourselves with respect to this ordinance. And obviously, as a result of what we did last night, there's going to be some ancillary work that will proceed. which might make the conversation that we will have ultimately better informed. So we'll see.
If it's possible, if we could get the ordinance and the
Tomorrow.
list, sooner than the agenda.
I'll
Just
circulate.
electronically is fine.
I'll circulate it tomorrow.
Please call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is the, I'm sorry,
Number 6.
that would be the update on manager search, Councilmember Moss.
So, I believe that we have received so far our 4 companies that have requested to the RFP that we sent out. I was hoping that would be on the agenda tonight. Unfortunately, I think there was one company that is out of state that couldn't get here. But I think that we need to prioritize this. For me, this is probably the most important item that's probably going to come up in front of us for quite a long time, and that really has a huge effect on what's going to be happening in our village after September 30th or from October 1st on. So that being said, a few things that I want us to think about. One, the idea that we should be postponing something just because a company can't come, for me is, they need to work to our schedule. We can't just see, hey, let's just keep waiting. Let's keep waiting until people can make it. Let's tell them you make it or you don't, and it just makes the decision easier. The other thing is, if we're going to sit down and look at this at the next council meeting and review these search companies, I don't know how long it's going to take to go through 4 companies. It could take 15 minutes. It could take 4 hours. And I think that we should seriously consider maybe having a special meeting just on this particular item, and that we can really just focus on what we're doing that night on deciding on which firms to start with. And that's all I wanted to say.
Would you, and I agree with everything you say, but I also think that we need to give enough notice to individuals who are out of state to fly here. So just tempered with that. But I think it should be enough of a priority that we're giving enough lead time that they can commit. Would you consider starting the meeting on the 23rd? I think they're all available on the 23rd, maybe at 6 p.m. so that we have more time. And the other issue I have is, do we concurrently want to start looking at job descriptions, which will also take a lot of time? So if we all want to circulate what other municipalities have done and what we think are best practices and priorities, so that we're not spending another 2 months on that.
May I make a suggestion that is purely optional, but I will follow my suggestion? This is a left brain, right brain exercise. Best practices is relevant, and the other thing that's relevant is what each of us in our hearts and heads think this manager's skill set, character, attitude, work ethic, dedication to service should be. There's an objective part and there isn't a subjective part. We've gone through this, Myra and I. I will tell you, for me personally, at the very end, it was a subjective decision. And so in preparation for this most important thing that we will do in 2018, I urge you to think about that.
Fair enough. And because we have our manager here, thank you very much for everything you've done. We appreciate you very much. You have carried us through very well. Thank you. It is bittersweet. It's bittersweet.
Myra?
Yes, Katie.
Procedurally, one of the things, because we're not going to have a separate task force that will be reporting to us. We are the task force. So it seems to me, before we move forward on not necessarily finding a firm, but we need to come together as a group to be very on the same page of our priorities for the next manager and enlist those priorities. So we know, by and large, all of us need to come to some form of agreement, I think, in order to try to minimize any misunderstanding as we move forward. So is there a platform that we can do that?
I think there is a platform, and I would suggest that if we all want to submit through Jennifer our list of priorities for a search firm and their services and what we want them to do, and then a list of priorities for, I guess, the candidate.
Do you have a council workshop or something?
Can I just add a couple things? Typically with these manager search firms, the firm comes in and one will provide you with a draft job description, which you'll have to bless. So these people will come forward once you select them with a job description. Also, they usually interview with all of you individually.
Yes, they do.
And they obtain all of your priorities, and then they come back to you, and then they agree to put out the bid. So it's going to be a very fluid process between you and whatever company you select. It's very detailed. I mean, the way I've seen it work in the past in a lot of different communities, including this one. So a lot of the stuff that you guys are striving to have now, you may want to just wait so when you hire the person. And then just my last question, on the next meeting, do you want us to have a resolution prepared blank for selecting a consultant, or do you not? I just want to.
I think we could be ready. Yes. If we're not ready, we're not ready, but it's
least
very
there
possible.
and-
It's very
okay.
possible we would be ready. There's no
I
harm in
think,
that.
given how much we really like to make sure that we look at every issue from every possible angle before making decisions, I think taking Chad's advice that we will be going through this exercise with whoever we hire, it's probably a good idea for us to still do our preliminary work
Absolutely.
to help move us down the road a little.
I agree. I just didn't want you to, I mean, these people are going to come with a lot of ideas and they're used to, so I think it's a good idea to do it too. I just didn't want you to.
It's
think
not
that
all
they-
on us.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Gary and then John,
I just want to emphasize, if you look at the presentations that were sent to us by all four of these firms, they were picked out for a reason. These are not headhunter firms. These are municipal executive placement consulting firms. And they don't get a headhunter placement fee. They get a consulting fee. And part of what they do is analyze the needs of what their client, the village, needs. They make their suggestions. They help us through this process. So this is every bit as much of a consulting kind of an arrangement as it is an arrangement for someone to come and find us the next manager. So I think that certainly there is no harm in getting ahead of this and all floating our own ideas, but I just wanted to make sure that we all realize that we are going to expect more from whoever we retain than just finding us a person. We're going to expect some guidance, consulting, and their suggestions and input as to what they think we need.
Gary, I agree. And I also, one of the things that struck me last time we did this process is there were a lot of managers at the time that were either unemployed or looking for a change, and we had a big group. There is nothing wrong with recruiting someone who is currently in a position and is great.
I predict our next manager doesn't know right now he wants a job.
So that's, to me, one of the things, the communications I want to have with our future
Sure.
consultant. And thank you, Frank, you let me speak.
Gary, I've mailed out 100 trucking, if I may.
Yes, yes.
My experience with us trying to start something I think we need to start before 6 o'clock.
It's going to be long, right?
Okay.
I believe it should be
5
5 or 5:30.
I think so.
If we get finished early, then we have the backroom discussion, but I just am very, very concerned.
Fair enough. Folks, are you all available?
Yes.
We can call
We
it a
will make
special
ourselves.
meeting?
Special meeting, yes.
Special meeting before, do we have to,
5 or 5:30?
5.
I think we have to notice it?
Yes, we have to notice it 24 hours before, but
Could you send me an invitation?
Do we have consensus? We have,
Can we do it at 5?
I can do that.
5 o'clock.
When is
that?
this? What-
Yeah, I'm worried that our
The
whole
same
council
day
meeting
as
is
the-
going to get
January 23rd.
You're right.
this.
yeah.
You're right.
What do we do it another day?
Or if we do
Should
it the
we
day
do it
before or the
another
day
day?
after, whatever.
I
mean, when we did the undergrounding, people, we
Another
spent the
day,
whole
because if not, we're going to be, by the end of the council meeting,
Do it on
To
Wednesday.
Brett's point, this is going to be one of the
Consultants.
most important things we do. We should
the
give it the time it needs.
consultants have already accepted for the 23rd.
Yeah.
And they're coming from different states. So maybe what we want to do is extend a second council meeting for the next day, if that's our concern.
And move the majority of our agenda items to the next day.
Correct.
And then move it back to the time that the council meeting normally meets.
Whatever you all want, I think.
7 o'clock on the 23rd, and our number one agenda item will be this, and then the next day we.
I don't think we should meet at 7 o'clock. I think.
You think it should be earlier? 6?
Earlier.
No
6,
idea
okay,
what-
Lucho?
We are going to have a long.
Let's just do 5 o'clock and see if we can do it. If we can't, we extend to the next day,
Let's do it at 5 o'clock. We're going to have a long night.
It's going to take 2 hours,
at least.
and 5 o'clock is when we,
So, okay, a special council meeting then on January 23rd, just to discuss this item. And then we'll proceed to the regular scheduled council meeting at 7
So,
p.m.
I'm sorry.
And if we are
And then-
starting late, we may want to do like follow-up council meeting for the next day in case.
But you can continue it at that point, correct, Chad? If you don't finish the agenda or you decide not to finish the agenda of the regular council meeting at that point, you can continue it to another date, correct?
I mean, I think given what we have now, you may want to just notice it as a tentative. I mean,
Okay, why don't you do that?
Tentative extension of meeting.
Tentative extension of meeting to what date?
The next day.
The next date at 7 p.m.?
7 o'clock.
7 p.m.
Okay.
Is it not better to just have 2 meetings and not start at 5? It seems like that doesn't necessarily work for everyone starting at 5.
Well, the one thing that Allison brought up that I'm thinking about, if we start at 5 o'clock, and let's just say it takes 4 hours or 3.5 hours to go through this, that means that our regular council meeting is not starting until 8:30. There's people coming in for public comments and stuff. So now you're starting to have like a mesh of,
Special meeting on the 23rd, council meeting on the 24th.
yeah, let's do that.
I still think we ought to meet earlier than 7.
Okay.
we're going to find that 2 hours is going to get most of this done. They're going to make fairly brief presentations, and how long it takes after that is going to be up to us.
But it's
Have you been to our meetings?
Yes, I have.
On council?
Yes, I have.
I think we should have, if you get to go home early, that would be awesome.
Reads eternal.
I'm sorry, but they cannot change their travel arrangements to the 24th just so I can stay with the 23rd.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
no,
can't we
they
just tell them to
still come
change
the
the day?
23rd.
We're hiring them.
So can't they
Tell
just
them to
come a
on
day
Wednesday.
later?
If they can't do it, they don't want the job.
Come on, Brett, some of them
Brett.
have already made arrangements.
If a client calls me and says, I need you to be on here that day, I gotta move my stuff. I do.
I don't think that's.
let's,
Is it that big of a deal to
we
do
won't,
the
we won't
second
know
meeting the
right
next day?
now. So let's just, we won't know.
I'll circulate the dates tomorrow, and I understand that you guys would want it separate.
Yes.
Okay. The next item is adjust existing development incentives to respond to electrical demands and flooding. Councilmember Moss.
Yeah, this was a very awkwardly worded item, but so basically, this is something I was talking about a little bit a year and a half ago, 2 years ago when I was campaigning. I want to try to get something going here, so I'm bringing this up at a consideration to all of you, my colleagues, to see if this is something that we should look into. And basically, what I'm looking at is right now, the prices of let's say new lots, new construction are going down right now. And most people think that in most places, that means development is going to go down. And that's not the case here. As prices go down, you're going to start to see development is going to start firing up pretty quickly. What I think is we have built into our single family homes, our duplexes, in the key incentives. And basically the incentives are set up where you get a floor area ratio, and that's about, based on your lot size, that's how big you can build your lot. And there's a base that we're at 30%. And there's certain bonuses that we give, it's incentives. So basically we want certain things to happen in the design stages. And basically that allows you to build up to 47% of floor area ratio. The thing that I have is I think that there are items in there that when I look at them, I say, what kind of benefit does this have to the community, right? And I know that we do have some real issues that we talk about all the time. And one of them is flooding. Another one is electricity. We're talking about the FPL substation and the demand on it, and the demand's increasing. Why are we not looking at other ways to give incentives to people to build what they want to build by putting in rainwater harvesting systems? And when it rains, instead of it coming off the roof, draining into the lot and slowly going into the streets, and then everybody's complaining there's flooding in the streets, it's being harvested into a tank before it gets in the streets, which can be reused for irrigation or whatever they want to use. And that can help offset certain things. Photovoltaics can help reduce demand on the substation. I think that we should relook at this and say, what benefits can we give to our residents, to the developers, or to the homeowner that's building it, and how can that respond back to an overall issue that we're all facing, instead of just trying to run around looking for solutions to pump things out. And I think this is something that we should look at. And Frank, I know that you were a huge part of the last ZORC or the large ZORC that went through. So I know that you know very detailed about a lot of these issues, and I would be very happy if you were involved with this as well. But I think as a council, we should go back and look at this, say, you know, right now we're giving incentives for reveals and for molding. I don't know what that really does for the community, but it's allowing you to build bigger, you know, a bigger lot to do something that I'm not really sure about. But I'm definitely sure that if you put photovoltaics on, that you're doing something to reduce demand, and if you're doing something with flooding. So I want to bring that forward to you guys, and I would love to kind of start working with whoever, staff and council members, in order to maybe start moving something that I think is more beneficial.
Absolutely. Allison.
Brett, I'm so happy you brought this up. This is something that I feel really strongly about, and I've met with Sergio about it. I know Frank and I have talked about it, and I sort of was feeling like we had the conversation about maybe doing like a mini ZORC, and I hadn't brought it up because I was thinking we were doing that, but I think maybe it's time to set a actual date or a time. When are we going to do that and revisit it? Because Brett, I think you're spot on.
Let's do it in February early. We talked about doing it and scheduling it last year. The reason we haven't done it is because we're delayed in doing it. We're just late. This goes back a long time. The ideas behind FAR incentives are obvious, but the incentives themselves are dated.
Yeah,
they are. A lot of these incentives come back post-Andrew, when the GC spec house, you know, mushrooming of the same thing over and over again was being developed. So that explains a little bit about the reveals and moldings, but it's all dated.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Okay.
There were 5 sections from the zoning code that Sergio brought forth for amendment. The reason I wanted to kill that is because, well, for several reasons, but one of them was I wanted to deal with a zoning amendment in a thoughtful and comprehensive way. So those 5 sections and the FAR and the gross FAR concept are included among the things that I think we should do. We should do it right away. So let's schedule something for February, and we should probably do it.
Mini ZORC.
We should do it as a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And let's prepare in advance so that it's well organized, and we don't have to spend 3 hours deciding what sections we're going to look at.
Sounds great.
We can't look at definitions, right?
And we could do little sections at a time. If we just want to focus on this small section, let's do that small section, and then we can come back. And I know it's sometimes hard to get comprehensive all the way around by doing that, but I think that we can get a general idea of all the sections that might need something, but then go section by section. And
Brett, can you work with Sergio to really identify where we should start?
Sure.
I'm sorry, did we discuss a date?
In
I think-
February.
Let's do a workshop in early February.
Okay, I can circulate dates.
Perfect.
There's a sign ordinance, I'm sorry.
Yeah, meeting coming.
The monument sign.
Monument sign workshop. Which is related to this as well?
Oh, I
Or
think
no,
we
we need a
separate them.
separate one. We're going to
Separate.
need a separate one.
There was someone that brought up changing that date to another date.
I'll speak to that. The gentleman that came before us at the original one, who was going to come back with sort of a comprehensive plan and an idea, is not going to be able to make it the date
It's
that we scheduled it.
the
So I don't know if
20.
we want to change it for one resident.
The 25th of January.
Yes, that's when we have it scheduled.
Let me look.
If anyone would
So-
be open to.
And let's do a little sunshine with anybody else who wants to come, but Brett, would you do that with me? And
I'll do.
I've already made my notes as to what I think we should do, so.
Great.
Or
And I wanted to make
For
sure.
a mini Zork, for a mini Zork, but it doesn't include signage, I think that should be disconnected.
agreed.
Exactly.
And there's a few other elements that I thought we could cover easily.
Excellent.
Is everyone open to changing the date for the sign workshop?
He had requested having it on the 24th instead of the 25th. I
The
don't
day
know what
after.
that does to everybody.
24th of February?
The day before.
Wednesday.
Is it January or February?
But that would interfere.
Be moving our.
That would interfere with the
Oh,
manager
wow,
switch.
we're going to be 3 days in a row.
We can do them on the same night. No,
It's like November all over again.
every night.
I had one for 5 nights in a row.
Yeah.
Wasn't going to stop.
So keep the date the same? I mean, it was just one person's request, but I thought I'd let you guys know.
Or do it for the following week.
We can't do a meeting and a sign workshop in the same night.
No.
No.
For one meeting ahead.
So 3 nights in a row.
I'm sorry, one
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
That's all right with me.
For what, January?
January 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
You guys crazy?
No, let's not do that.
That's
please.
too
Let's put it the week.
Come
Let's
on, let's
postpone the
let's go
sign the week later.
So let's do the monument signs the following week.
I would say February 1st is the Thursday.
There you go. That sounds good.
I'd rather do it on Groundhog Day under the theory that if they all disappear, we'll be happy.
But that's Friday.
Good strategy.
So I will move the sign workshop to February 1st at 6 p.m.
That works better for me.
Okay, next item, or? License plate reader system on Crandon, Councilmember Moss.
So this goes back to the discussion that we had, that we were starting, but it wasn't the same discussion that we were supposed to have. So I wanted to follow up on the item that was, that we approved for the Mashta Bridge. And I think there was a comment, and I know this has been a discussion for quite some time, is if we're putting a license plate reader so the police can detect someone that is either in a stolen car or a felon, why are we not doing that in the only entrance to the key in order to provide public security, basically, for the key? I understand that there are some ideology type views of this, right? But the way that I look at it is that we're not talking about the FBI or the CIA overlooking it. We're talking about our local police being able to be proactive instead of reactive when someone enters in that has an issue. And I know that they know that they have found crimes that have happened here on the Key that when they actually caught the people, they were in a stolen car. And if they had the system, the police would have gotten an alert as soon as they passed through into the key, and they would have be able to be proactive, go out there and get after them. But they have to wait to get a call that something has happened, and then they got to go find the people. And when they find them, it's a reactive. So I don't think that we're really impeding on privacy here. I think that it's only reading the license plates. One, two, the other side that I see is that if anybody thinks that they're not on camera, I think they're crazy in this day and age. I mean, you're getting photographed when you're coming through the tolls, And that, there's no way around that.
Not sharing that information with us.
They're not sharing the information with us. We're getting, you're on video in half of the homes in Key Biscayne as you're driving past them, you're on a video camera. I mean, if you think you're not being videotaped at any time, is crazy. So I think that if we're giving a tool to our police in order to provide better public security, and it's not really that big of a cost for us, I don't know why we're not thinking about it. So I wanted to just bring this up to get an idea of where we all stand on it and see if this is something that we want to look at or not.
Yeah, I think probably the only reason not to do something like this would be if we exalted the civil liberties privacy issue over the public safety convenience solution. I don't look at this that way. I tend to think of it as you just suggested. I don't see this as unusually intrusive in this day and age.
I agree. I thought we should have done it back when we did the Mazda situation, which now would be redundant, but it is what it is, you know.
They get double security, I guess.
I think not only should we do it, we should advertise it at the entrance to the village.
Yes,
put people on notice.
Yeah, but you have to be careful because then they get smart and they say, well, don't drive in your car, or, you know, take your girlfriend's car if you're going to go do something, right? You got to be careful a little
Now
bit.
you're talking entrapment.
Yeah, there you go.
Not leave me out of this. It ain't my car.
So they would get into one of our cars and leave the island.
Maybe that. Yeah.
Good idea.
So yes, I agree 100%.
Next item is update on Hurricane Irma swale cleanup. Councilmember Moss.
I just wanted to follow up on this. I know that we brought this up a while ago, and there were some concerned citizens that were reaching out to me about tree stumps, swales, having holes where the stumps used to be, you know, sod missing, dirt. And I know that the last time we brought this up, we were just kind of finishing up the stump removal. We were going to check out to make sure that the holes were filled. Just want to get an update to see where we are right now, and that I can go back to these people who reached out to me and just say that things are being taken care of.
The last stump will be removed on Friday, so the stump project's completed. The swale areas that were of most concern were the ones that had the brown spots. There were a number of those. I chose not to give any direction to correct those because we were getting into an area where I was getting rain, and we have seen the fact that they have come back. Those holes, for lack of a better word, where the smaller trees came out, that was almost difficult sometimes. We were responding to and still respond to, because when you're riding, you don't always see them. But we have, the sheet that I had at the last council meeting had some 35 of those on it. I don't have a sheet in front of me today, so we've been working very hard at that. The issue of, and we'll use the area on Crandon Boulevard back by the Grand Bay Estate homes, that swath area back up in there where it looks very, very barren, and even though it isn't our responsibility, I am ironically, and I'll thank her publicly, but we were already meeting tomorrow with the landscaping committee, and I wanted some direction on how to go about addressing that. So we're 99% there. There are some big areas, and there's only one or two small areas left. But now, if someone has an issue in their front yard and their front, please get a hold of the staff at the administration offices, and we'll get on it right away.
So the brown spots that we have
They're
now,
coming
they
back.
will be, or will you be sodding any of them, or some?
That's individual. If we find that they're not taking, if we found that because they were brown, cars were parking on them or something like that, and we've torn them up, we will replace them.
And how long do you guys wait until you make the decision whether to replace
The
it?
decision's already been starting to be made when we've seen obvious things.
Okay.
I'm primarily on the perimeter roads. We're not really deep into the neighborhoods yet. We should be, but I'm only looking at the peripheral roads.
Okay, and I was also on the understanding that a lot of the street trees that went down, we're going to wait before replanting them only because of the possibility of the undergrounding of utilities.
Because that's going so quickly, it may be 2 or 3 years, but my initial decision was, let's not really get too involved with large trees with a lot of changes if we know in fact. I'll probably wait another 2 or 3 months to see how we progress before I make a different decision. I think it's the right decision for now because we will be coming in later.
Okay.
John, for the single-family home area for the Grand Bay, have you all had communications with the management, and are they taking action? What is the delay there? Because I am getting a lot of complaints from residents wondering why that.
Well, I don't necessarily think there's a delay there. It took a long time to get that area cleaned out. I've taken it upon myself, although I have not made contact. I know the people to contact in there. But it looks better than it did, but it's
certainly
just,
does, but
just cleared out, and we really need to get into more of a the coverage and the type of things that we need back up in there. And I will be leaving that with the landscaping committee for a recommendation after they meet tomorrow because of Cecil.
And you don't think, but you don't know if they have a plan or not?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't, but we'll be working together.
Okay. Thank you.
Next item, I'm sorry, is a potential traffic circle on Crandon Boulevard. Councilmember De La Cruz.
Okay, so I've been doing a little research and hopefully be able to bring something back to you all for the next meeting. I've been speaking with Joe Corradino regarding a potential traffic circle for the intersection of Crandon and Harbor Drive. And there are some potential limitations. There might be some space requirements that we may not be able to meet without purchasing some land. But I really do believe that planning forward, remember, we're still going to be getting more and more people onto Key Biscayne, no matter what we do. Even though we're going to get the lights are going to be fine for most of the time. But you know, when traffic is worse, the lights are going to be taxed, just like not like they are right now. But they're still not going to be the perfect solution. And I've spoken to several people that are involved in this business, and they think the traffic circle is definitely something we should look into. So I'll be bringing something back to you all, for probably the next meeting or the one after that. I'm working with Joe to see if we can get an estimate of what it would cost for us to study it, because obviously, excuse me?
I thought we had discussed it when he did his traffic impact study. I thought it went just, I don't know. I don't know. I had a deja vu moment.
No, I think that's right.
And so that's
we
why.
had that discussion.
Yeah.
Where that discussion had been had of replacing them.
Right. So he's going to.
Putting a new one, actually putting a traffic, you're telling me a traffic circle at the intersection.
The entrance of Key Biscayne.
Harbor and
Harbor and Crandon. Harbor and Crandon. Harbor and Crandon. So
he's just talking about Harbor and Crandon. That's it. Traffic.
Harbor and Crandon. Okay. So, right now we're looking to put a smart light there, but I really do believe that particular intersection could really, if we have the space and if it's not prohibitively expensive, I think a traffic circle is the perfect thing for there. So.
Yes.
What have you learned about how the traffic circle would ease congestion over the light?
Well, I've spoken to Joe Corradino,
Yeah.
And he seems to indicate that, if it's doable, it would definitely be a huge improvement.
Typically, traffic circles are the most efficient.
I'll have some materials back for you guys that he's putting together for me, and it's very interesting. I think we need to start to keep planning forward, because we have more people coming on to Key Biscayne, not less. Every time that we redo a Mackle home, we get more people.
What about the Key Colony light? It seems to me that might be a perfect place because of the disparity of traffic.
I don't think it's big enough. That area is not.
There's a problem there, because with the problem that you have, a traffic circle only works when it's continually moving.
Right.
The problem that you would have at Key Colony is that the people going into Key Colony will start backing up for security.
Right.
They'll stop the circle, and then it's just a big.
And there's really not 4 streets there. Remember, there's only this.
The intersection
One
signs.
of my,
They're coming in and out of the.
one of my, one of my concerns is the left onto Harbor every morning and every afternoon, but
The left?
especially on Wednesdays.
The
The
left.
left on Harbor going northbound and go for the left. on Crandon, making a left to Harbor to the schools.
Right.
I mean, that backs up really
Tremendously.
far. And
Right.
I think, and even the traffic circle in front of St. Agnes and St. Christopher then backs up.
Well, yeah, that's because it's a product of what happens at the corner of Crandon and Harbor. Okay.
No, it's because of the ingress and egress of cars going to the school and taking the kids out and stopping in the middle of the road and parking on that. I mean, I think it's more complicated than that. I'm
Well,
just,
we'll see. I mean, we're not the traffic engineers. Let's talk to them. Let's
Well,
let
and
them.
they have spoken to that for us, right? They've addressed that when they've come here and said some of that issue is actually a line of people waiting to get into St. Agnes.
Correct.
But there were options of rerouting the St. Agnes traffic, rerouting the traffic by 7-Eleven so that it goes in one way and out the
So
other.
that could be part of
so
what.
I guess my
But
concern
the-
is
the good
it
news-
has to be holistic. You can't just.
And the good news is that Joe's looked at this and he has a lot of this stuff and
So hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have something for you. He almost had it for this meeting, but by next meeting, we'll have something for you to look at and, see if we can do something.
I have a great video too on traffic circles doing just that I'll send. It's short, but it's interesting.
Want to keep showing it building?
I just don't want to be living
No,
here
it
anymore
talks
under
about why
construction at that intersection.
Next item is zero tolerance enforcement. Councilmember McCormick.
Oh, I'm up. So I've heard from friends, from residents, people who got tickets, didn't get tickets, how happy they were when we did our period of zero tolerance. And I've seen us as an island sort of slipping back into some bad habits and dangerous ways. So I spoke with Chief Press about the idea of bringing it back, and he had felt similarly and said he had already sort of instructed his officers to do this. But I wanted to bring it up and talk about it and see if maybe he might have something he wanted to share with us of things that he's seen and what's going on out there.
Can you explain what you mean by zero tolerance?
Yes, when we did the zero tolerance traffic enforcement.
Right.
So what I see, and again, being here, all day, I'm starting to see not only the frustration that people are having of some of our residents not obeying our traffic laws, and obviously the inherent dangers of that, right? But beyond that, I'm starting to see this sort of like concept of self-help, if you will, of people taking upon themselves to tell their neighbors or fellow residents what they should be doing, and getting this sort of like an us and them of rule followers versus non. And it's becoming, I see, a big issue. And I think an easy way to start addressing it is simply by more stringently enforcing our traffic rules.
More tickets, you mean?
More tickets.
More tickets.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people.
I
that
know you're
needs more
not.
tickets.
What do you think, because you've raised this, and I think it goes along with some of this traffic enforcement and the complaints I've gotten along that, but of minors constantly on golf carts, and especially on
That is a
Friday
problem.
and Saturday
That's a huge
nights.
problem. And it's not just Friday and
and-
Saturday night.
But especially, and jumping off, and parents frustrated that there's absolutely, that we all turn from their perspective, a blind eye, that the police is there and they don't do anything. They're just really, really concerned about safety.
I would definitely support that.
Two sets of parents, right? Because I live on a corner that is like really big on joyriding for underage drivers. In golf carts, some of them look like in cars too, but I'm assuming that they have a license. But, I've asked, in my frustration, I've pulled some of them over. And they don't
Citizens arrest.
Yeah, I literally, with my kids in the golf cart dying of embarrassment, I'm like, you pull over, do you have a license? And they're not all there without their parents' knowledge or permission. Some of them like, oh no, I have my permit, I'm going to soccer. And it's really dangerous. And if we don't do something about it, I think
We
we're negligent.
definitely should do something about enforcing the golf cart the regulations, because whatever they are, I don't even know that they exist, but
They're the same as a driver.
yes,
You have to be licensed.
well, yeah.
You have to be licensed, and you have to be licensed.
Absolutely. I see kids driving around all the time. The kids, by kids, I mean kids less than should be driving. And I definitely support that. I'm not so sure about giving them a ticket, but certainly taking them home and figuring it out with their parents, figure it out.
Why not giving their parents a ticket?
Well, maybe yes, I'm not saying no.
If
I'm
they
just saying
were-
whatever the police officer happens to believe is the right thing to do. I think we should trust the police
If
to
they were to
do.
hit one of your loved ones and they're a
No, absolutely. I think the golf cart
Have lots of kids
situation
that play in the
is
street,
definitely
and
something.
kids driving
you know,
golf carts.
The golf carts are something that we have a benefit of here in Key Biscayne, and sometimes we become very lax on that. And as parents, we probably don't police it as much as we should. And our police officers can definitely help us with that.
Brett.
I get very confused when we start talking about this because I'm not for like one of these communities that have quotas and they're just like, I got to go out there and give tickets.
Absolutely not.
But we shouldn't be telling our police to go out and ticket people who are speeding, people who are going through stop signs, people who are driving without a license. That's the law, and they're there to enforce it. We shouldn't even need to be talking about this.
Yeah.
They just need to go and enforce it. We don't need to tell them to go out there and, get 1,000 tickets this month. We don't need to do that. But we need to tell them, go out there and get these people that create a dangerous place.
But in particular, golf cart situation, I think we are responsible, I think, because I see kids that are definitely not old enough driving those golf carts all the time.
Sure, if something's a problem that we see that's becoming a growing problem, we should definitely let them know. But I don't know what the zero tolerance, for me, it's just like police, enforce the law. And if you get a ticket, you were doing something that you weren't supposed to. But don't go after people to try to give them tickets just to make something.
No, I
like
don't think
that.
that's the discussion. though.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying.
She thinks there's enough low-lying fruit that it's just going to.
Yeah, I think.
I just always get confused by why we even have this
Because
discussion.
I think having the discussion in a community like this, where we on one hand are asking our police to do this community policing, get out and get to know everyone, and then we put them in a situation where then they pull over the person they just got to know, and they're standing there like, well, yeah, you did run that stop sign. Do I give you the warning? Do I write you the ticket? I feel like saying up here that we support them, we support Chief Press telling his officers, yes, if somebody is doing what they shouldn't be doing, write them the ticket, and I, for one, will say, you're not going to get a call from me.
You're telling them what to do. Why don't you let them be police officers, and they should determine when they give a ticket or not. I wouldn't want to get involved in that part of it.
My message is that you will not be hearing from me to try to get my friend or myself out of a ticket if I run a stop sign or I run a red light.
And you want to let your friends know that if they're breaking the law, that it's very likely they'll be ticketed.
But look, I 100% support that we did what we did before, and we should continue to always do that. I don't know why it should ever relax. We should always be enforcing the law. I think that the golf cart thing is definitely an issue. I also think that the crosswalks, I think people need to understand that they need to stop at the crosswalks. And if that takes a little more effort on our police to really watch over that, to make sure that people understand what they're doing, whether it's even a warning or whatever, we need to, those are the two things that I would say that are issues beyond that need to take focus, other than the regular thing of speeding, going through stop lights, going through stop signs, which I think that if I went through a stop sign, give me a ticket. I mean, I broke the law. And that's it.
I didn't say that.
Can I make a comment?
Give me a ticket. I'm never going to ask.
We just talked about license plate readers and civil liberties, and that was one conversation. I think this conversation, you got confused, I get nervous. I want to live in a world where excellent police officers have some discretion. I don't want to think that every infraction results in a maximum sanction. It doesn't feel right to me. Just a comment.
I agree.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I think that there's a sense from the kids and the parents who allow the kids to drive the golf carts, that it is okay for them to do that, that we don't care. And I've seen a lot of dangerous behavior.
We do care. I think that message has been transmitted loud and clear.
I don't think that there's a big segment of our population with kids between the ages of 12 and 15 who have received that message.
Can you give parents tickets for their kids driving golf carts?
Yes, you can, but we're talking about two different issues here.
Right.
The golf cart issue involves some severe penalties for the violators and for their parents also, which, if that's our direction, I think has to be done sometimes. I understand what the Vice Mayor's saying. I understand extremely well what Ms. McCormick is saying. Here's how I look at this. We have been very careful in my tenure here not to turn Key Biscayne into a police state. I'm very aware,
and we
and
appreciate
our officers are very aware of the state of Key Biscayne and how our residents live here, act here, and how we interact with each other. However, the driving has become severe. So when we did our 3-month effort last year, it was with the blessing of 7 council members who saw for themselves and understood that our roadways were becoming dangerous. Now, it was our intent to target only those infractions that were serious enough to cause bodily harm or put people in danger, period. I had spoken to Councilmember Moss about a scenario that happened to somebody he knows, and they also received some minor citations along with the hazardous violation. That's not our intent. This is not a quota scenario. This is a reduce your bad action scenario. Having a discussion with the manager a few weeks back, we talked about the stop signs outside of our building here. 2 days ago, we sat out there, and not in our cars, but we put people in the corners, and in 20 minutes, we wrote 14 hazardous, moving, running stop sign violations, not crawl-throughs, not I'm just about there. I'm talking about blatant, in broad daylight, people in golf carts, trucks, and cars just blowing through with no regard to anybody at all. That's right next to our community center. And it's extremely dangerous for our kids and our residents who bike there, walk there, et cetera, and so forth. The pedestrian scenario is very real here. No matter what we do, we have put cops out in gym clothes and had them walk across the street and have people have run them down. And we've cited those. We've faced the allegations of entrapment, et cetera, and so forth, which it is not. It's the same thing as just having a guy with a radar gun standing out there and tagging somebody who's speeding. But we've only gone after those violations that have been in excess. So my question to you all is twofold. Number one, if we start taking action against the juveniles, which we do a lot of, I wish I had my stats tonight, but we've written a lot of them, they stand to lose their license till they're 18. And the traffic ticket that we give their parents is an extremely costly ticket. So now we're removing that opportunity for that young person who many times, believe it or not, just like what was said here tonight, the parents say it's okay and let them go out there. But that child is now going to pay the price and not get a driver's license till they're 18 years old.
Well, that's if you write the actual.
But I have to tell you, sir, with all due respect, we have warned, we have educated till we're blue in the face. We've put up signs, we've given out pizzas for driving correctly. We've done everything we possibly can. And the only thing that actually was taking effect, just like it has been done in Pinecrest, like your traffic engineer and our consultant has told us, Joe Cordino, is strict enforcement. And I'm with Frank. I don't want to take away discretion from our police officers. If somebody runs a stop sign, but they're sick and they need to get their kid to a doctor or things like that, we're not blind. Our officers always have the discretion to make a educated decision at the moment. But there are clearly, our guys went out to the causeway a week ago, and they wrote 16 moving violations, none of which were below 60 miles an hour. And all but one of those tickets was our young people coming home from school. None of which was below 60 miles an hour on radar. So it's out there, and the dangers are occurring. I need clear direction from you all so that what we do out here is not interpreted as a quasi-police state, but as an opportunity to help safeguard our community.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the discretion that you use. I think it's great. It makes this community wonderful, and I understand what you're telling us. I do think that there is a problem with when you have every Friday and Saturday night, and when there's a day off, 6 12-year-olds in a golf cart chasing each other and trying to run each other over. And this is a game, and they don't realize what they're doing. I understand that, once their frontal lobe develops a little more, they're going to realize how stupid they are. But I'm also concerned that there will be accidents and that we are promoting dangerous, or, we're allowing for this to happen. I don't know what the solution is, but I know there's real concern from our parents that, their kids are put in danger, and sometimes they feel that everybody else, there's just, the culture is such that that's acceptable. How's that? And I don't know how to change it, but I think we need to recognize it.
I do know how to change it. All I need is direction.
I have a
Yes,
question
Gary,
for you,
sorry
Chief.
about
I tend to fall squarely in line with Frank and Lucio as far as discretion, and creeping through a stop sign typically doesn't warrant a ticket, but
Flying through one.
I have to agree that this golf cart thing is out of hand in this community. It's totally out of hand. And I don't advocate giving a 14-year-old a ticket, but I sure as hell advocate giving his parents a ticket. How many times have you seen in a 4-place golf cart 7 kids, 4 of them hanging off the back, and the person driving is probably 10 years old? I mean, it's something has to be done about that. It really does. And I think the enforcement is not to penalize some young person so they can't get their driver's license for 2 years, but it's certainly to put the parents on notice. This isn't allowable out here. If you don't care about your kids, care about the friends that are riding in their cart or the other people that are sharing the streets. And one more comment on that, and I don't know what, if anything, can be done, because if you want direction, I'm just giving you my input on it. Harbor Drive is our main thoroughfare, and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. And a large percentage of the traffic on Harbor Drive is golf carts. And some of those golf carts don't go but 10 miles an hour or 12 miles an hour. And a lot of them are driven by kids, and if they're driven by kids, they're floored, so whatever they'll do, they'll do. There's got to be some way, and I don't say limit golf carts. I think that's a great way to get around Key Biscayne. But there's got to be some way. You can't legally pass a car or a golf cart on Harbor Drive because it's a double yellow line. But on the other hand, if you've got golf carts going 10 or 12 miles an hour backing up traffic on our main thoroughfare, there's got to be some way to compromise.
Well, the compromise is that the cop hopefully is intuitive enough to realize that that person who's just going around that golf cart is not doing it so that they can do 70 miles an hour. It's because the golf cart's doing 10, and they're allowed to be there. At the same time, the car has the right to do 20, 30 miles an hour, whatever it is. And as long as it's done in a safe manner. It's when you see some of this passing that our folks have really focused on that's extremely dangerous with oncoming traffic and things like that. So
That's back to the discretion.
That-
I think
that's
to
what
me,
I
that's
mean.
more than fine.
I don't think we're out there writing stupid tickets because I would have a whole lot of complaints lined up. So as far as enforcement goes, we'll take a lot more of a definitive approach toward golf carts and young folks and getting their parents involved. I could tell you when they do stop the young folks who don't have DLs, they call the parents and make the parents come get the golf cart. So
That's a great
there
idea.
is a discussion there, but if there's no penalty applied to it, 2 weeks later, that kid will be right back out there driving that golf cart.
Can I just,
Please.
zero tolerance maybe was not the right word for this. I clearly think that our police should have some discretion. But my perception of what's happening on our streets, I think, is really different than yours, Luis. Like, I think it is extremely dangerous. And I think that we really have a problem we have to deal with. I also think that the situation with a lot of these, not all, but a lot of the kids that we see that are driving the golf carts, the reaction when their parents get involved, when the police go to the parents, is very different than maybe if your kids took the golf cart and the police came to you. I imagine they wouldn't have taken it again. What I hear that the police face is that the police are the bad guys from the parent in defense of the child, and that perhaps then steps aren't taken to prevent this from happening again.
Right.
Which is why I feel like we need to maybe amp it up a little bit.
Just so we're clear, I agree that our kids are abusing our golf cart privileges. I agree. And
I think it's
that we
cars
need
too, though.
just to pass that on to our police chief and for him to take whatever action he feels is the right thing. Whether it's calling the parent and bringing them to the site or having them come and pick up the golf cart, or giving them a ticket, whatever. Now, taking and giving a ticket to a kid that then is going to have to wait 2 years later in order to get a driver's license is,
It's going to stop the problem real fast.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure
Stop
will.
the problem real fast.
No, well, they'll keep doing it.
Chief,
And
question.
then they won't be able to do it. I mean, that's just my idea.
Well, after
A
you-
recommendation.
Do you have the discretion to use civil citations for children when it comes to driving?
No.
It's out, it's not part of that statutory.
We have official warning citations, just like we have for adult drivers, if we want to give them a written warning. And that allows us to track that.
And what is the biggest citation you could give a parent for allowing their minor child and maybe too many kids? And maybe
Well, the
that's-
too many kids is there's really no actual infraction that I know of for overloading a golf cart with kids. It's careless. It would come down to careless driving.
But don't they
is
have
what it
to
would
have
come down to.
seatbelts?
They're supposed to have seatbelts. It's just like any vehicle. They're supposed to all be in seatbelts. They're supposed to follow all of the traffic laws. They're supposed to have a licensed adult in the vehicle with them over 18 years of age so that they can do the things that they're supposed to do right. I can tell you that we can do this. We're very capable of doing this. But sir, with all due respect, the cars are just as bad. The texting is way out of control. And the school zones are becoming dangerous again. So my suggestion would be that we will use our discretion. However, we will start enforcing the clear, dangerous violations and hope for some overall compliance, just like what happened the first time we did it. And we don't count. We don't tell guys to go in and come out
You
with
never have.
10 or 12 or 14. It's never happened, and it never will happen. But if they come in with one very dangerous violation, I'm just as happy as if they came in with nothing. And if they give 3 warnings that day and they feel those warnings were sufficient, I'm just as happy.
Do you deal with this in the schools?
Yes, sir. Our DARE officer has been doing a lot of work with the kids who are of age to be in the golf carts, and now we're doing the DUI programs. I think you saw that article in the Islander the other day about how we're using the goggles in this new little goofy cart that we bought. The kids are loving it, and they're learning about distracted driving and how dangerous that could be. So our program is good. We also use that computerized distracted driving program where we bring that to the schools also, Mast and the K-8 and St. Agnes with all of the older kids so that they have an idea of what's going on.
Maybe ramp up those talking points a little bit. You know, I'm just thinking of a tragedy that occurred last New Year's Day that I think involved you and Chief Lang.
It did.
When it comes time to strike a balance, I don't want that to ever happen.
Exactly.
I could tell you that that was one of our worst days, and when we went to see that mom and pop and tell them what we had to tell them, it's devastating on people, and that should have never have happened. So it is up to us, and it's up to you all to support us on this, because it's clearly a government process to protect its citizens and take whatever action we need to take to help people help themselves. And that's what this is.
Well, Chief, you have my support to stop bad traffic behavior, dangerous traffic behavior, so you have my full support for it.
I think you have all our support.
I think you have all of ours.
I do.
That's what he wants to know.
Thank you.
Does he have all our support?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make one suggestion that maybe can we send out something through either Constant Contact or however our text alerts, just a little blurb of what the rules and consequences are specific to underage driving?
I will be happy to.
So that it maybe if
And I'll
kids
reach
start
out to
hearing
the
this
Islander
18.
And we'll use multiple
Thank you.
ways of contact.
Thanks.
I believe it's time to hear the manager's report, and he has one item.
Yes, ma'am, and if I may.
Yes,
It should only
please.
take 3 or 4 minutes. You'll note in your agenda that under the village manager, I'm starting to put in here for informational purposes an update on our sustainability studies and our sustainability efforts. I have with us tonight Derek Zuglu from D-Square, just to give you a quick overview of what you have in your council packet and what you can expect in future council packets.
Thank you.
Derek, please.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
First thing I want to go ahead and start off with ties into a discussion item that came up in December's meeting, which had to do with the sustainability plan, and I wanted to highlight some of the issues from there. Give me 2 seconds. This is one of the items that was also forwarded, and maybe a little small to read. You should have a digital copy. Essentially what I did, Mayor, off of the comments that you had done, is I had taken all the long-term, short and long-term goals that were in the sustainability plan and put it into a checklist format that was very visible, easy to follow. And what we did is we broke down in conjunction with what these strategic networks look like. If the responsibility fell on D-Squared, if it was for a strategic network, if it was for the village. And the other thing that we've started to do is actually track progress. What you'll see is the last blue column to the right, which in terms of percentages, again, those are very subjective. But essentially with progress that has been made over the last couple of years, we wanted to give you a little bit of transparency as to what kind of progress has been made in each one of those categories. Again, I'm not going to belabor this, but you have this for review. We have 8 main categories that we're in.
We don't have this sheet.
I'm sorry?
We don't have that in our
We
packet.
don't have it in our package.
So wait.
That was sent out as a digital copy. I'll
okay.
forward a copy to the manager's office so you can then pass it out. Okay, so essentially
Was it
the 8
sent to all of
categories.
us, or do we have it?
I'm sorry?
Did you digitally send it to all of us or just to the
No,
manager?
all my communication is sent through the manager's
Oh,
office.
okay.
So I will forward that again. Again, the 8 categories are all broken down and we have everything there. This idea is to have the checklist items as a living document. Again, I know it was brought up in the last meeting that some of these items may be obsolete. That's definitely a possibility. This plan was developed about 5 years ago. And the goal moving forward is to actively engage with council members, with the community, with the business community, the residents, to update these objectives as we see fit. Some things in terms of transportation have changed. Things in terms of waste management have changed. So as we progress through the sustainability plan and plugging away and taking these items, we want the input from you, we want the feedback from the community to be able to update this document to make it the most effective. In terms of the plan that you have in front of you, which is the one that I am pulling up right now, basically what we've done, this is an overview of everything that was accomplished from November to December. It does say December. This was something that we had prepared for the last meeting of the year. Unfortunately, it got pushed back. I am really happy with some of the comments that came up tonight because there's a beautiful dovetail with some of the items that are being brought up by council and what's on this plan. First of all, with the mini Zork that's coming up, we would love to be involved with that, because I know green building is one of the items on the checklist. To Brett's motion on the electric, the energy efficiency and also the flooding, that also ties into things that we've been looking into. And of course, with traffic, with what's going on with Freebie, with Lime Bike, and also the density, these are all items that we want to address. So if you take a look at this page, which is the very first one, we're basically looking for 5 decisions from council to help push things along, and all of the information that you need in support of these 5 items is contained within this report. Number 1, the solar array for government buildings. So we have a highlight page within this document that essentially takes a bid that we were proposed, that we were presented with, and gives you an overview of what the project cost would be for the 3 government buildings. It's $1 million, and the potential savings is around $70,000 a year. So I understand that there's an RFP process involved. What we're looking for from council is, yes, let's look into this further. And we will take that step. We will set up those meetings. We will meet with those people. We'll present that information to you, and that way we can take those next steps. Doesn't just sit on the page. Waste to energy. Yes.
Is this something that could be done through the solar co-op? I thought they had government. Do you know about the solar co-op?
Yes, of course.
So, because I think, just putting it out there, I didn't see it in
Absolutely.
the report.
Absolutely. Waste to energy. Our very first discussion towards Key Biscayne, which was back in 2012, was dealing with the potential to establish a waste to energy facility. Again, with energy efficiency and lowering the demand that's on the substation here, I think this is a tremendous opportunity. If you look at the page that's within this packet, which I'll get to, the Key generates roughly 50 tons of waste a day. And that's not including landscape and yard waste. All of that waste, instead of being sent off the Key, we can take and repurpose and essentially power a huge percentage of the Key's needs in terms of electricity. Walk It Wednesdays. This goes to transportation and congestion. One of the things that we're proposing is that the village get behind this concept of Walk It Wednesdays, where we're promoting riding the bike, walking, using the golf cart, and reducing our dependency on gas vehicles for people to make it to school, or to come back to school, or to go to activities, or even to go to work if it's possible. So again, we have an analysis here within the presentation, which I'll get to. Solar panels for Freebie. We made a fantastic trip up to Fort Lauderdale, and we visited their wastewater treatment plant. They have roughly 20 golf carts on site that they use for maintenance purposes, and all the golf carts have been retrofitted with solar panels on their roofs. And this is fantastic because if one of the gentlemen is on the other side of their 10-acre property and he's there for 2 hours, the golf cart's charging while he's there. And then essentially the golf carts can be left anywhere and they will charge where they are. They plug them in once a month just to maintain the batteries, and it's a wonderful option. I know, the potential for extending or expanding the Freebie fleet is a discussion. I know that there's currently 2 spaces being used in the garage at the community center for charging. The benefit here is invaluable because essentially while these Freebies are waiting to pick up clients, they could be charging their batteries. So there's a huge benefit to the community. And of course, rainwater harvesting system. I know that the renovation is still underway for the Village Green with the turf. One of the things that we would like council to consider is the potential before they finish that project to looking into the installing rainwater harvesting systems. Now, on each one of these points, this is an overview of the solar, which you will see in there. Again, roughly $1 million cost. That is considering that we are taking up 100% of the available roof space. Now, obviously, this is not something that needs to be done at once. This can be phased in. You could do 25%, then 50 and 75, and so on and so forth. This was just something that was presented to give you an idea of what the savings potential would be if we decided to go through with that. Here, this was a fantastic program that was initiated through Todd, through the Department of Parks and Recreation, which was at Irrigation Management Consulting. And essentially what they did is they put a monitoring system, and you'll look what the estimated flow rate and actual flow rates were. And just in June, excuse me, there's a couple of errors here in terms of nomenclature. But if you compare June of 2016 to 2017, because of the program that they implemented, they were able to save 1 million gallons of water just within those 2 months. So this is another fantastic example of some steps that the village is currently taking.
What did they do to do that?
I'm sorry?
What did they do?
So essentially what they've done is they put in a monitoring
Oh, it's
system.
just the monitoring, and then they know when it's on and off. That's it.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
It's like a sensor. The type of sensor. Well, okay, more sophisticated.
And if you look at the schematic that was actually provided me via Todd, there's actually, you can see where those sensors have been implemented. So there's different zones, which is much more efficient in terms of the application. This is just a brief overview on one of the issues that was brought up in the last meeting, which was the fleet vehicles for the fire department. Here, this talks about waste management here, current practices in the key. These stats were taken and did not include, I believe, November and December. We were roughly a little over 2,000 tons for 2017, and 277 tons being recycled. And if you look again, the fact that this waste is being taken on an average of 18 miles away from Key Biscayne, when you talk about carbon footprint, that's huge. So if we can reuse that waste here in the Key, we have a tremendous opportunity to offset some of our electricity needs. This talks about some of these stats that were actually presented in the initial plan to you back in August. As you know, landfills are currently running out of space. We only had about 5 more years of space of landfill without extra property being purchased here in Miami-Dade County. And of course, there are the recycling rates, which is the state mandate of reaching the 75% recycling by the end of 2020. I met with ID department, and they have taken tremendous strides in reducing their carbon footprint. Essentially what they've done is they've replaced a lot of their bulky desktop items with much more efficient, smaller units, and those resulted in a 61% energy reduction in their consumption, which is roughly equivalent to $2,700 over the course of the year, and they are continuing with other programs. So I thought that was fantastic. This page basically talks to Walk It Wednesdays. If you look at the column all the way on the left where we break down the schools, there's a little over 2,200 students active within the community. If we take only a percentage of that and we consider that they're doing walking or golf cart, electric golf cart or biking, you can see what the impact is. And basically, you know, we're just north of 500,000 pounds of CO2 that we'd be removing from the year just by doing that once a week. So if we can get behind something like that, I think it's a tremendous opportunity. I know Melissa spoke to this. This is just an overview of the fantastic stats that Freebie provided in terms of usage. Essentially, we had the same exact statistics from Lime Bike that we wanted to provide some insight to you to see what the usage was like. And of course, this is what I mentioned before with the rainwater harvesting. If you look at the footprint of only those 2 playing fields, we have roughly 3.5 million gallons of water falling on that property every single year. So if we can capture some of that, and some of that water can be reused for irrigation in adjoining properties, can be repurposed for flushing the toilets in the public bathrooms, that's a huge savings. And I think it sends a really great example to the surrounding communities that we are seriously committed to sustainability, and it's a simple fix. It's something that's not going to be...
How do we do it with the fields that are already laid?
Well, they have drainage underneath already. It would be simply a matter of taking those drains and connecting them to cisterns and then deciding what the end use of the water would be.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think the drains are outside the sides of the fields, right? They're not underneath the field. I mean, they're underneath, but they go out, yeah.
Correct, they go out. So if you look at the perimeter of the field, they've created a concrete border, and the drainage, from what I understand, is on the outside of that. So any installation of tanks would not interrupt or disrupt what has currently been done. It would essentially be done on the area that has yet to be sodded. So again, tremendous opportunity here. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing the sheet we didn't get. Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it. Of course.
Derek, is there a possibility of getting any grants for the solar initiatives,
So
and
I reached
especially on
out-
our government building?
Yes, so I reached out to the people that we've been discussing with, twofold for your answer. Number one is the golf carts. The golf carts are eligible for the 7% Florida state sales tax, and they're also eligible for the 30% rebate because they are a for-profit entity. The government buildings would only be eligible for the 7% tax credit, but because the village owns those properties we would not be eligible for the 30%. Then I also talked with them about financing mechanisms such as Y Green and PACE. and it was a similar situation. Those are for privately held properties. So essentially, the feedback that he gave me with the other projects that he's done in terms of municipalities is that they prepare for those types of expenses with their budget planning. And then the other thing that he's also seen is that they've actually put it out for bond to pay for the projects.
And if we were to put solar energy, I'm sorry, one last question. One of the issues I know is the difficulty in actually storing solar energy to use it when you need it.
Correct.
And so what is the system that would be available if we were to?
So we are in discussion right
invest?
now with another local-based company who we're actually using for a project in the Caribbean, and they do battery storage. And this is a fantastic opportunity because it not only addresses the storage in case the storm goes down, but they also deal with something called peak shaving. And if you know anything about demand, typically the mornings and the afternoons, you have these huge spikes in electricity, and you get charged more for those peak demands. And essentially what we can do is if we couple the battery storage with the solar, we can shave those peaks and we can reduce our costs. So essentially what you're doing is you're tricking the system into thinking that you're using a standard amount of electricity because you're relying on the batteries to take care of the excess that you're demanding. So we have the technology available. We're working with the manager's office right now to get some more detailed information that's not provided in utilities. Essentially what they have is they have 15-minute interval data, which we would take and we would use that to come up with a quote to accompany the solar. So that would be something else that we would be able to address.
Just FYI.
Yes.
I already had a conversation about a month ago with one of the execs at Solar Cities.
Okay.
They'd be happy to come down here and do an assessment. I think
Fantastic.
they do it for free.
Okay.
You may want to, I'll give you the contact. You may want to follow up on that.
Absolutely. That'd be wonderful.
But the challenge we have is where to put the batteries. That's
Of course.
really the.
Okay.
Derek, and I think this is also for Todd, in terms of the cisterns for the parks, is this something that could be a state grant because they help with park sustainability and improvements? Yeah, because session is just starting and we may want to, okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Next item, I believe we left off.
Yeah, there is, we had a couple add-ons, sorry.
I believe there's public broadband, Councilmember De La Cruz.
We can probably do this for the next time. I was expecting some information from our good friend Theo on this, and I haven't received it. He might have sent it, but I haven't received it.
I believe this is going to be part of the undergrounding engineering master plan that's going to come. They're going to actually have a component in here to study whether we do our own system or private, all this kind of stuff, and I think it's going to come in.
That's wonderful. That's basically what I wanted to get to.
And there's a special
There are
company
some
that's-
issues. There are some issues that Theo has researched that I wanted to tell us all about.
Okay.
But maybe next meeting. But there are a couple of issues with regulation and such that broadband is a problem. But we definitely need to explore it to the utmost extent.
Thank you.
Update on our state and local lobbyists, Mayor Lindsay?
Yes, I was made aware, and we literally just got this memo. Our lobbyist, Elvis Barker, has expanded his services and his employees in Tallahassee. It is an even more well-staffed and aggressive lobbying group. He's got a lot of former legislators who are now working for him as of today. And so, one, wanted to let you know as we got this hot off the press, and two, wanted to, I guess, have us consider that we would have to give authority for them to represent us in their professional capacity in Tallahassee. I believe that the manager needs to authorize the lobbying registration. And we have this memo, and it's got a list of the people. And I know this is last minute. We literally got this at 6:45.
Need to make this determination today?
We haven't even read it.
There are lobbyists.
There are lobbyists, and we don't have a problem with it. That's
They're registered for, we don't need to do
got
it.
we've got additional employees who would be speaking, who would be lobbying on our behalf.
So it's the additional names.
It's the additional names.
That's all?
That's it.
No, like I said, what's happened is one of the principals has left. Manny is no longer with the firm. And in the meantime, the state, through Fausto, sent me the automatic hit the switch and allow them to represent us as state lobbyists. But I needed that direction, just like we've done any other time.
Let's do it.
I can't give much more explanations to what occurred, but I do know the state is asking for me to authorize them to lobby on our behalf.
And I think you'd recognize a lot of these names and their people that,
Yeah, the ones that came to me this afternoon were Daniel Diaz,
Leva,
Daniel Diaz Leyva, Todd Lewis, and Mike, and I would butcher this gentleman's name.
Aridopoulos.
Thank you.
And he was,
I ran for Congress a couple of years ago, right?
It's
Not Congress,
He
state
ran
rep.
for the State House. Let's,
and Mike was the president of the Florida Senate.
So I will push go to go first thing in the morning.
Fair
Chad-
enough.
Chad, would I need a motion or just, no, the consensus? Thank you. The next item is the relocation of NOAA. Mayor Lindsay.
Yeah, just another FYI of some of the stuff that came up. I couldn't hear you. No, thank you. Some of the issues that came up during the holiday break. I bumped into government relations representative, and she asked if we were aware that Tampa has been trying to recruit and move the NOAA facility that is currently in Virginia Key and put it in their city on the bay. And a lot of stakeholders in Miami-Dade County are concerned, and I think we should be as well. This is wonderful institution that we have that so many of us partner with, the Rosenstiel partners with. FIU has major partnerships and projects ongoing. They also do a significant research and reporting on our waters and the state of the ocean and the bay. It's a great loss. It's a brain drain. So I thought that we should consider this and consider taking a stance.
Let's do a resolution.
I wrote a resolution. I'll bring it up. I'll bring it forward. I wrote something. I spoke with somebody over there.
Okay.
The holidays intervened, but I'll bring it along next time.
Terrific. I will be following up and meeting with people as well as I get more information as to what can be done and where they are with this process. I'll let you know. But I thought, in terms of all of us in our community, it's a big loss, and it's a big loss to the current employees and future employees and the sustainability of this discipline and great resource.
Their facility is ancient, and Tampa's put a big hit on them. has to step up, the county has to step up. There's not much we can do to partner economically, but we can certainly lobby and weigh in, and we should.
And I think that's where we can be valuable. I agree with all of that. And Beacon Council, I think, can also step up. And that's anything else? Yep.
Next item is a revision to the hurricane plan. Councilmember Moss.
Yeah, I actually just thought about this today when I was driving down the road, and I said, we had workshops on what we learned from what went well and what could be improved on our hurricane plan. And we're about 5 months away from hurricane season. And I just want to make sure that we are continually developing this plan and what we want to do in this plan. I know that we had issues with the way a contract was written with the cleanup. Maybe we can look back at that and see what we can do with it so we don't have any potential risks. I know that there were some ideas about FEMA, what they can cover and what they can't, the responsibilities of the village taking care of all citizens, whether on private or public property. These issues I know we've talked about, but we just really haven't done anything with it yet. We just talked about it. And I'm looking for the council to get together, give very clear direction of what we want to see on that plan, get that plan going so we're not doing this last minute right before hurricane season.
Great idea.
So I wanted to bring that up.
I thought we had given a deadline. We had discussed that we wanted feedback.
There's two things. There's the operations that are annually updated, and I can let Chief Eric Lang discussed that, but that's what we have been focused on. The administrative issues that became much more comprehensive than we have ever had in the past regarding the gated communities, regarding the way the contract was drafted and things like that. We haven't begun that yet. again, but what you were right, we were
I
supposed
thought
to.
we had given,
The hurricane planning process really begins, when I say begins, as far as exercises, begins the 1st of May, a month before the hurricane season. We will have to you probably in late March, the issues that you all have that need policy decisions from the council. The operational things are ongoing every single day as far as making sure that we're current and updated.
put it on.
So on the policy side, I'm not even yet clear where we all stand on all those issues.
That's correct.
And I think we need to take a vote at some point and say, hey, we want to do A, B, and C, and let's get this into the plan. So I think that it's something on our side right now. I think the ball's in our court. The last thing I remember is that we had a workshop. We talked, but I don't even really remember what the
In
actions
particular,
were.
I don't know where we are with respect to the contract with our
Thought we were supposed to.
truckers.
As I said, that is not a policy, not an exercise we've gone through yet.
Right.
We've been doing the operational things.
Yeah.
But gated communities, policy decision will affect later on down the road my operational components.
Right.
The contracts, you were very concerned with the way they had been presented in the past, and we will change that and get those to you far in advance. They take some negotiating, but you all want to be part of that. We get that. And there were probably one or two more things I'd have to refer back to my notes on, but I understand what you're saying. We've just been looking at our operational hurricane plan up to this point.
Brett, would it be helpful if Jenny were to take very detailed minutes or some kind of report, so just to refresh our recollection as to the issues that were raised?
It'll be included
From the workshop.
It'll be included in the next.
And that way, we all have, starting at the same.
That would be great. Refresh us.
Well, the important thing is that we not be caught in the same situation that we were this time, you know.
And to Brett's credit, that's what we're trying to address.
We have to be prepared. We have to make sure that our contracts are correct, don't allow performance over, 6 months and that kind of stuff.
And doesn't there need to be a little bit of time for this draft of something that the private properties would give us the permission in an emergency situation to go in?
But remember, that's not our responsibility. That's theirs. What we would help them do is, they are the ones that appeal to us to go in and work in their communities.
Okay.
That's what happened. We didn't have that up.
We're going to need to have the waivers
Right.
and all of that up
And
front.
that's on our side to
But,
create these waivers?
but we will work with them to do what needs to be done to get them qualified and certified so that we can go in those gates. But again, that request has to come from them, and we will work with them. And we've already committed to that to the Council on Condo Presidents.
And that's, remember when we went to that follow-up meeting where all the condominium managers and presidents were present? This was raised and there was follow-up, so that is happening concurrently, theoretically.
I just think we need to make sure it happens so that it's in place prior to anything.
Absolutely.
Significantly before we need to act in a hurry.
I think that in order to deal with that private debris removal, if the council wants it, you're going to have to adopt some type of ordinance.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
that's the guidance that we'll give.
Good. So we'll be working. Thank you, Chad.
Sorry. Last two items are requests for executive
Oh,
session.
okay, let me read them quick. I'm requesting executive session to desire advice concerning litigation regarding the Village of Key Biscayne versus City of Miami, case number 15-2997, CA21, and the Village of Key Biscayne versus MMMA, case number 15-9160 in the 11th Circuit Judicial Circuit in and for Miami-Dade County, Florida. The clerk will provide reasonable notice and time in the future of that executive session. I'm also requesting an executive session in Key Biscayne versus Rios, case number 15-028572, CA32. This is a forfeiture case, which we're going to mediation in, and we need to get some legal advice, from some legal strategy and guidance from the council in that case. Again, public notice of the date and time of that executive session will be provided for in the future.
For both.
Second.
So, well, you don't need to, you just got to make an announcement.
Announced.
There you go.
Withdrawn.
We agree. We get it. We got it. We'll do it.
Okay, ready?
Who's going to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Good night, all.